like to call the meeting to order. The City of San Marino appreciates your attendance, whether it's virtually or in person, and the citizens and residents' interests provide the council with valuable information regarding issues in the city. As you all know, regular meetings are second Wednesday and the last Friday of every month. Pursuant to Executive Order N 2920, members of City Council may teleconference, and also we're under still the coronavirus advisory. So as a precaution, the city is asking members to follow some new directions that we have. Members of the public, this is all stated in the agenda that's online and published. Members of the public may observe and offer comments at this meeting telephonically, in person, or otherwise electronically. Public comment will be accepted by email to cityclerk@cityofsanmarino.org before and during this meeting, prior to the date of the close of public comment on any item. So if you do have one, we will go through that with regard to each item, and you may submit it in writing. You may also speak here today if you have filled out a comment card, and also we will be accepting electronic comments via the Zoom teleconference module. If you're an individual with a disability, there have been accommodations that have been made, and those are also in the agenda. And there are 3 ways to participate in the meeting: from home, via computer, by video streaming, via phone and audio, and I hear myself, submit public comments via email. So can we have rise and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Yes, indeed. Good morning. Councilmember Huang?
Here.
Councilmember Jacobowski? Here. Councilmember Tull?
Here.
Vice Mayor Udi?
Here.
And Mayor Shepherd-Rani.
Present. This special meeting agenda was posted 24 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, Kroll Public Library, and the Recreation Department. As I said before, the city welcomes public inputs, and we will have, if there's any questions, or I don't know, it's not in here, if our acting city clerk would like to explain the procedure again more thoroughly than I did, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. For each item on the agenda, there will be time for public comment. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes and will be timed by staff. We will accept comments in 3 ways. We'll take in-person comments for each item. Please fill out a speaker card and turn it in to me if you wish to speak on an item, and those are located in the lobby. We'll also accept comments via email sent to cityclerk@cityofsanmarino.org. The email address is also found on the agenda. These will then be read into the record, and we must receive these emails before the public comment period for the particular item ends. The comments may be summarized if necessary to limit it to under 3 minutes. We will then ask for comments from our Zoom participants. When we ask for public comments via Zoom, there are 2 ways you can let us know you would like to speak. First, you can use the raise hand feature, which is a button that's found by clicking on participants and then clicking on raise hand at the bottom right side of the screen. This will let us know that you'd like to speak, but we ask that you do not use this feature until we've asked for public comment, or else we may not see it or know which item you're asking to speak on. As a second option, you can send a typed message via the chat box on Zoom saying that you would like to speak on a particular item. And comments will only be accepted until the end of the public comment period for that item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Ms. Merlo. Do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment at this time? It's a public comment period, so this is for items that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to state law, the City Council may not discuss or take actions on issues not on the meeting agenda, but we reserve the right to place limits on the duration of those comments, and staff may be asked to follow up. So do we have anybody here that wishes to make a general comment on an issue that's not on the agenda? Or are there anyone speaking up online or sending in an email? We'll take a moment to check.
I do not have any emails for items not on the agenda. I do not see anyone requesting to speak on Zoom either.
Thank you very much. So I'll close the public comment period and we'll proceed with the agenda. First on our agenda, we have 2 consent items. Do any council members wish to pull any items from the consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Huang.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Tall.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eady.
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd-Barney.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, and since there's been a great deal of volume received about agenda item 6, I will be taking that out of order so that we can respect our residents who might be on the phone call as well as here and might have to work. So we'll proceed first with agenda item number 6. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mayor. The item before you this morning is a recommendation to award an architectural design services agreement to Crane Architectural Group to design the renovation of the San Marino Center and turn it into a refreshed and rejuvenated community event facility. The San Marino Center has been a public priority for the City Council for over 2 years. On April 24th, 2018, the Council voted 5-0 to develop a plan for the San Marino Center and include it in your strategic plan as a priority initiative. The Council on January 31st, 2020 affirmed again with a 5-0 vote to include this project in your priority initiative process. On February 28th of this year, the Council provided direction to staff to include this project in the draft capital improvement plan. Then on March 27th, the Council reviewed the draft list of projects to be included in this year's capital program. At that time, you might recall, there was uncertainty related to the pandemic, and the San Marino Center was placed on the pending list because the Council needed some time to understand the impacts of the pandemic on city operations and finances. Consequently, on June 5th, the Council voted 5-0 to include renovating the San Marino Center into this year's capital improvement program, funding the design work, and requesting that staff bring back to the Council options as to how the project could proceed and how much time it would take. Each step in bringing this project to fruition was built on the prior decisions made by the Council at each of those public meetings. In the most recent of those meetings, on July 8th, the Council with a 4-1 vote chose an expeditious schedule to get the project out to construction this coming spring, while simultaneously extending the time for community engagement and comment. The Council deliberated between 2 implementation options, one that would take advantage of knowledge already acquired by Crane Architectural Group and would result in having construction bid documents in January 2021. That option had a very tight, only 3 weeks, public comment period. The second option was a longer schedule with a 4-month-long public comment period that included each of your boards, commissions, and committees. This option also included a 3-month-long consultant selection process. The second option would then have construction bid occurring in August 2021, or 7 months longer than the first option. After much debate, the Council voted 4-1 to go with the fast-track option in all ways except public input. On that front, the Council directed staff to extend the public comment period to 5 weeks and add a significant number of public meetings with a variety of bodies, including your boards, commissions, and committees, a town hall next Monday, and at the San Marino City Club, who is a frequent user of this facility. The department welcomes suggestions of other groups we should reach out to for input. In order to successfully complete the public input portion of the project, we must have the architect on board so that the firm may hear from residents directly and unfiltered on their design preferences. Consequently, if those public meetings are to occur in August, as you approved on July 8th, it is important to award the consulting agreement today. Crane Architectural Group has been working with the city for over a year on this project, and last August developed a conceptual floor plan directed by city staff based on how community groups have been using the building. Crane also prepared some ideas for the building's exterior that are just suggestions as to how the building might look. As part of the public engagement process, Crane is expected to compile community ideas and suggestions and modify the conceptual plans as appropriate. The design will be presented to you on September 9th, will reflect the community's input. As you can see from their project references, Crane Architectural Group has designed new community centers and renovated existing ones for many years throughout Southern California. Rick Crane, principal architect and owner of the firm, is available via Zoom link if you have specific questions regarding his firm and relevant projects they have been involved with. In 2014 and 2019, Crane worked to develop remodeling and ADA plans for Stoneman, and most recently repaired the plans for the new Lacey Park restroom, which is under construction. Although the restroom project has encountered contractor difficulties, those difficulties are in no way related to the Crane design. Regarding the procurement process, both the city's purchasing ordinance and the government code requires that professional architects and engineers be selected by a qualifications-based evaluation process and not by cost. The public contract code, which we use to select contractors to build things, is based on the lowest bid regulation and the get 3 bids process. However, this process specifically excludes architects and engineers. Instead, as it relates to architects and engineers, the city's purchasing ordinance allows the purchasing official to recommend an award to the firm that, in their opinion, offers the best combination of quality and price. Typically, as with many other professional services and purchases, the city would solicit 3 written proposals. However, the city's purchasing ordinance also authorizes the finance director to waive the need for 3 proposals if there is good justification to do so. The assessment by your city manager, your finance director, and me is that Crane Architectural Group has unique and intimate experience with the San Marino Center that makes them the most qualified to understand community input and quickly develop final plans. Their fee represents 8.7% of the estimated construction cost of $4 million, which is below what we expected for work on a 68-year-old structure with scarce plans. Our recommendation also supports the implementation schedule you approved on July 8th, which included using Crane Architectural Group to design the project and be out to construction bids in early 2021. As it relates to timing, now is a very opportune time to get projects into construction. The San Marino Center is currently vacant due to the pandemic, making it desirable to move to construction as quickly as is practicable so as not to dramatically inconvenience its typical users. On an annual basis, the San Marino Center serves 6 recreation programs and over 30 community events and activities, some of which occur on a weekly and monthly basis. After the renovation is complete, you could expect many of the over 40 groups that use the bathroom to switch over to the San Marino Center due to its refreshed larger spaces and more event-friendly room configurations. The city is also a very attractive client during these times in that we have funding readily available in your capital improvement fund, a situation that many of our neighboring agencies do not enjoy. The sooner the project is out for construction bids, the likelier the city will receive competitive and favorable bids, and lessen the chance we will be competing with the 2028 Olympics for building contractors. Before I conclude, I would like to make one minor correction to the draft agreement before you. On page 6-21, the time scheduled for a community engagement phase should be 5 weeks instead of 3. Therefore, it is recommended that the City Council award a professional design services agreement to Crane Architectural Group for the San Marino Center renovation project. This concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council members? I'll start with Councilmember Jacobowski.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have a number of questions. Thank you for the report, and I'm going to backtrack a little from our last meeting where we discussed this issue and see if I can get some clarification on a few issues, okay? And then this will include component parts for a few folk. Can you speak about this building? We certainly have, the city owns both this building and Stoneman. we know some of the deferred maintenance and ongoing maintenance issues at Stoneman, but can you talk a little bit about this building, its condition, its safety, and what you see as needed on an ongoing basis?
Thank you, Council Member, for giving me an opportunity to talk about the condition of this building. The city typically only makes urgent repairs to this building. That is primarily due to a limited budget that we have for building maintenance. The existing infrastructure, the plumbing, the electrical system, the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system are very obsolete and very old. The electrical system is original to the building. The building was built in 1952. There have been some upgrades over time, but they've been effectively just patching things that have been broken. And even currently today, we were on the roof, hopefully repairing the air conditioning system enough so that it will make it through this meeting. The building's envelope, which is that part that keeps the weather out, is in slow decline. You may have noticed, if you'd seen the video that we prepared that's online, the exterior of the building has cracks in it, which allows water to intrude into the building's wall system. The roof system is leaking. Anyone who's been in this building just has to look up at the ceiling tiles to see that they're stained. That indicates that there's leaks. As the department finds leaks or finds scenarios where there are leaks, we do effect repairs, but we've not put a new roof on this building for probably 20 years. The wooden shakes on the front of the building are certainly old and have not been replaced recently, and they would not be an approved material anyway right now. So we have issues there. The building is structurally, it's original to 1952. It's very important that we, as part of this process, probe into its skeleton to make sure that all the connections comply with current seismic standards. The floor does have interesting cracks to it that we've identified as following the sewer lines that run underneath the floor slab, and that would be something that has not really been addressed since they were constructed. There's issues there. The building site is generally paved in a very haphazard way. We don't have any true legal accessibility to the building under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that is a problem for this being a public building.
Thank you. Would you say of this ongoing maintenance, is it done in-house or do you contract out to address these different issues you're talking about?
Some of the minor work we do in-house. We can do minor electrical work like changing out luminaires that fail on us, the fluorescent tube systems. The air conditioning and the heating work, we do have to contract that out because it involves refrigerant and high voltage and gas. The building is heated with gas. There are about 4 furnaces all stuck in one room, and they're all different ages of furnaces. So we do contract that out. We do minor repairs, as the department also has other buildings that also require our attention.
Thank you. You had mentioned that the bid you received was about 8.7% of the cost of the proposed project. What would you consider to be percentage-wise a normal architectural bid?
In a project like this, you hope for 10% or less. That is the general industry standard. When I brought this project to you during the CIP process, I used the industry standard of 10% is what you would account for design and 10% for construction management. Generally speaking, when you start to renovate a building, you can really expect a lot more upfront costs to do investigation, to really see what's going on. We're at a disadvantage Many communities have old buildings where they have all of the plans for. The only set of plans that we've been able to locate are the original 1950 drawings. And we know that the interior of the building, the areas behind you, the restrooms, all of that's been modified over time, and we really like plans for that. That makes it a lot more difficult to do a renovation. However, because the building is so old, we're really not going to salvage any of its mechanical systems, except maybe exterior plumbing lines, perhaps. Because of its age and obsolescence, there's really no way to salvage any of that. It will be much simpler from a construction standpoint. They clean the building out, take it down to its skeleton, and bring it back. That way we know exactly what's behind the walls, up in the roof, and we can build a project that will last another 50 years.
Thank you. And to the safety issue, are you comfortable with the safety of this building?
Well, what I would like to is defer to our fire chief and our fire chief.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. You see a fire alarm that is up to code, and we have a building that meets the building standards at the time it was built. But I think you would agree, I've been here for numerous meetings, City Club, recreation presentations for seniors, and I've been heartbroken walking seniors out of this building. And that's the piece that I think we really do a disservice with residents. The pavement out and back is uneven, difficult for people to access. I've walked people down our staircase that they really need a ramp to access this facility. So that's the unfortunate part. Is it falling down today? No. Is the fire alarm operating? It certainly is, but we are not meeting the legal standard for access for those that are disabled or have a difficult time accessing our facilities here.
Thank you. May I continue? I have a few other questions. If I might move on to the proposal. Quite frankly, and I would, first I'll comment, I would absolutely like to see a significant number of other groups by name to give input into this process, and I would like to be able to share that later in our discussion. I feel so strongly that this be a project owned by the community. With that, I'll tone my words down. I'm not nuts about pieces of the exterior. Would that be an issue if we were to go with Crane in being able to offer input to make that more attractive?
It would absolutely be appropriate, and that's why you hire an architect. An architect doesn't direct your project. You direct your architect as to what features you want to see, what features you don't want to see. They provide you with professional guidance through all of their experience, and if you want it in a certain way, they're there to make that happen for you. And so this is a community-driven process as to the amenities, the exterior. If the community decided that they wanted to have a pink building, for example, then Crane would design you the best pink building that you could possibly get. If you wanted to do retro 50s, if you wanted to keep it like it is, if you wanted to make it more like how it used to be and people remember, I mean, that's all within what the architect does for us, because as our consultant, they follow our direction.
Thank you. And I want to just touch on the agreement briefly. There is an opt-out clause. Can you speak to that?
In our standard professional services agreement prepared by our city attorney, we always have the option for any or no reason to terminate a contract. And you have that in all of your, obviously the council realizes it's more difficult when you're in construction to do that. But with professional services, it's simply, we're done, turn over all of your documents to us. You have 5 days to do that. Submit your final billing to work performed up to date, and then you're done.
Thank you. And I have a final question for Rick Crane, if I may. Is he available?
Yes.
Yeah, I am. Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Thank you.
My name is Rick Crane. I'm principal of Crane Architectural Group. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. I would like to specifically ask you about renovations that you have been involved in with public buildings. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. I can list a few that we've done over the years. Buena Park Community Center. That was a renovation project. Originally it was a police station that got converted into a community center for the city of Buena Park. Garland Ranch Community Visitor Center, City of Monterey. That was a project that had basically been, for lack of a better term, maintenance was lacking, and so that was a renovation project. City of Fullerton, we did the Lemon Park Community Center renovation for the City of Fullerton. The Frontier Park, City of La Mirada, we did a community center renovation for the City of La Mirada. Bonneview Community Center for the City of Ontario. And so those are a few of the renovation projects we've done. From scratch, new community buildings, we probably have 5 or 10.
Thank you, yeah. I was looking more at something that would be parallel to our situation.
Or the renovation type
Yes.
things, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome. Okay.
And I had one final question that I forgot about, and this would be for Director Chung. Can you give me a ballpark of what the income has been for this building for the last fiscal year?
I will not have that information currently, Councilmember. I can get to that at a later time.
Okay.
Are you talking about rentals?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody has that information at their fingertips, but probably our Interim Community Services Director could provide some insight on that.
This past fiscal year is approximately $8,000 of revenue for this facility.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No more questions, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Wong, do you have any questions?
Yes, since we're trying to do this to expedite the process due to this pandemic, how soon do you expect the project to start?
The schedule that the council approved on July 8th includes us going out to bid in January. And if you go out to bid in January, you could expect a March or April begin construction.
So we would probably be back to regular schedule, hopefully. Would that be,
The building would be out of service from March to the following March or thereabouts, depending on the extent of any significant improvements that would have to be made. If you're just doing walls and ceilings and moving some interior partitions around, that is a simpler work than if you discover something more major that you have to deal with from a structural standpoint. But the schedule is a year's worth. We're anticipating 1 year of it being in construction.
I think, Councilmember, I might add, if you're asking specifically about COVID, basically, I think nobody in this room knows what will happen. I think we all hope that we're back to normal by then as well. There clearly is no way to predict what's going to happen. If you look at the last few months, things have shifted on a regular basis. The two alternatives, if you were to go back and revisit your decision at the last meeting and change your schedule, we would either go into construction in March or some significant point later. And then if we were reopening in March, we might reopen only to close down again. So even if we are somewhat back to normal, you might think that it would be easier to just continue the closure instead of bringing people back and then sending them back out again.
And if we have to continue this social distancing, where are we going to have our council meetings? If it can, if it can.
Lacey Park. We'll figure that out. We are resourceful people and we will figure that out.
I don't know, I think we need to have a backup plan. And to follow up on the fire standard, do we receive any complaints from any residents, as, Chief was telling us, some of our seniors was having problem walking out and walking in?
Complaints with respect to fire standards or building standards, no. But I did get a fair dressing down from one of our residents about our, while walking her and her husband out into our parking lot.
I know exactly who you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, and all right, thank you, Chief. And my final question is, did we put this money aside of $4 million? And is it going to offset our projection financially, long-term wise?
Well, you currently have budgeted $400,000. In next fiscal year, your capital improvement plan shows that you would have an expenditure of $4 million if the council gets to that point and awards a contract, and if it's that dollar amount. How it plugs into the multi-year capital improvement fund, it is accounted for as an expenditure in the following fiscal year, should the council approve that expenditure.
Is that correct? Through official, yes.
Yes, it was part of the forecast when we did the budget back in June, and it was part of the 5-year forecast. And if you go back to the budget document, you'll see that the overall fund balance of the capital fund incorporated the $4 million construction that was going to happen. That was planned for next year.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
No more questions?
Can I just follow up on that? Before you leave, because it actually had to do with this budget question. So this year for 2021, we budgeted 400 for the plans, architectural, or an estimated architectural plans. The building contract, which would take place presumably on the expedited schedule starting in March or April, is not budgeted for this year and will cost, over the course of a year, $4 million. Am I correct?
When we say construction in April, for
March to
2021,
April is what we just heard.
we did not budget the $4 million this fiscal year. It's part of the next fiscal year, 2021-22. So if we were to, it's part of, so what council adopted was the $400,000 architectural design. Now, the construction has not been budgeted, so we would have to come back to City Council and ask for that budget appropriation if we were to move forward with the construction in April of this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, can I have one final question?
Absolutely. Final.
Just curious, I mean, I don't like tear downs, but how much would it be if we were going to tear down this place and build a new facility? Because to me, $4 million for the renovation is quite high. Thank you.
You will spend at least this amount of money, $4 million.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tolt.
Yes, Director Chang, could you just go back in there? I have one question. With respect to the budgeting and the funds necessary for the construction, is the reason that we haven't actually budgeted is because until we have the architectural plans and the input from the community and have a better idea as to exactly what we want to do, we cannot You don't know if it's going to be 4 million, you don't know it's going to be 3.5 million, you just don't know the cost right now. It's just an estimate, is that right?
Absolutely. We wanted to go through the design phase first, and we knew that cost, but then in regards to construction, of course, that comes later. And we planned that we didn't adopt that $4 million this fiscal year, but of course, if we were to move forward with the construction this fiscal year, we would have to come back to City Council, as I mentioned.
And it may be spread out over 2 years anyway.
Yes,
This
being
year,
that it's
next year.
April, you'll most likely have to
Yeah.
roll over to the next fiscal year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is Mr. Crane still there?
Yes.
I'd like to ask, the community center in Buena Park, how much of the exterior did you have to rehabilitate in your design? Or is it pretty much the same exterior facade that you used?
No, it was a total renovation of the exterior facade to better match the city hall that was adjacent to it. The original building was basically a 50s block building, and the entire facade would change style and was completely renovated.
And the exterior, how much, what was the game plan to get public input in Buena Park for the purposes of the exterior as well as the interior? What did they do?
Similar to what's being proposed here, except the number of community meetings was a lot less. They had two, I think, if I recall, they had two public community meeting input sessions that gave the community opportunity to talk about what they wanted to see in the building as well as what they wanted the building to look like from the exterior as well.
And we planned a substantially more robust public input than...
I think if I remember right, and Michael can kind of answer this too, I think there's 8 meetings proposed right now as community outreach meetings to get input.
Thank you. Just some general questions to begin. For city staff, do you know any potential conflicts that the city might have with Crane? Does anybody work for Crane involved in the city, or to your knowledge?
No.
I've gone back, some of or many of the emails have talked about, well, let me start this way. There was one email that I saw that was an email to encourage people to send in what I would refer to as the to-know email. And it said in that email to encourage people to write in that we had hired a contractor. That's not, we haven't hired a contractor on this, have we?
No.
In the process of getting this information out to the public, because there have been suggestions that we haven't been transparent, and actually that's a deep concern to me, because I think probably all of us ran on a transparency campaign. We have discussed this in all but one public meeting, public city council meeting, since January, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And prior to those meetings, has all the information been disclosed to the public as part of the agenda that we put out?
As part of, we made the conceptual plans available in advance of your June 5th city council meeting, because up until that time, they were being used as budget estimating and schedule estimating tools. And so we, before your June 5th meeting, released it to the public through the San Marino Tribune and the city's website, and that's when we started getting public comment on the design, which was very encouraging. It was very exciting to...
And I'm going to get to that, because I found, in looking back, I just wanted to make sure
that we have been completely candid in the information. I found it's sad, all these built up in my office. I saw a May 21st, 2020, that talked about the budget includes proposal for renovation of San Marino Center. Have you seen that article that was in the Tribune?
Oh, I've probably read it, yes.
Yeah, and then do you know, does anybody know if we got comments off of this article? The first one?
I think the second one was the one that we got comments on because it had the rendering and when you show people's plans, they get all really excited about it.
And that's the second one right here. And there's the rendering down there. And we did receive comments. I remember receiving comments as well. About how many comments did we receive in response to this rendering that we sent out over 2 months ago?
We received 2.
2? And I know I received about 4 in suggesting good or bad. And I told them that eventually we will have public input. We have about how many times and this is directed to the city manager, have you had this in your report to the city manager's report to the community? Not the one that you sent to us, but the one to the community.
The weekly briefing? The weekly briefing, the one that was on Thursday? I'm looking over at acting community engagement manager Merlin, but yes, we've had it in there before, even if it's just to announce upcoming meetings and so forth. I don't have an exact number.
I'm just trying to think about ways we haven't been transparent. When did we begin discussing Crane's involvement in this project? That dates back to last year. Right? Crane has been involved in this project since
As part of your capital improvement program process that we started, I would think that we did mention that we had an architect who was Crane Engineers who developed preliminary cost estimates for us as part of our presentation to you about that on March 27th. That would have been brought up.
The discussion of Crane probably would not have started in a city council meeting prior to that, but we've been having conversations about Crane being involved, at least in the preliminary drawings, for about a year now, because that's how long they have been involved. So when we had discussions about what we thought we might or might not be able to do with the San Marino Center, and to the degree that it would impact what we could or could not do with Stoneman, and the degree that it might or might not impact what we do with recreation, we've been having all those discussions, and the use of Crane has not been a secret.
Was Crane involved in the public input that we had with respect to Stoneman? Back I think it was before I was city
Yes,
councilman.
in 2014, they were involved with a renovation plan for Stoneman, and if I recall correctly, the council did hire Crane to prepare a set of plans for the renovation of Stoneman, and then at some point after that, the council terminated the contract and wanted to go a different direction with Stoneman.
Right, so that kind of shows that we could, if we can't get what we want, we're not going to do it if it doesn't make sense for it, and that's after we hired the architect.
Yes.
In assessing the decision, well, let me take a step back. Have we ever not used the bid process?
Yes. The bidding process, not the public works contract.
Right, and I'm talking about
this kind of process where we normally would get 3 written bids. There is a provision in the code that allows for a waiver of the bidding process. It relies for items that are over $30,000, and in your discretion, the finance officer to either certify that it's a sole source vendor or that the city's best interests are served by waiving the standard bidding process. We do that regularly. you did it on your consent calendar today on the purchase of the vehicles, probably at least once a meeting. It's part of the purchasing.
So this isn't unusual where we assess the circumstances and decide to forego the bid process for non-public contracts. It's not unusual for us to do this. This is not a special circumstance.
Just to add to that, yes, it's unusual, but to focus on when we purchase goods, the sole source has been used, such as the vehicles that we purchased or we are going to be purchasing in the staff report that council just approved. Regards to professional service agreements,
yes,
just as this crane contract, I did some research and it looks like the last time we did do this PSA waiver was back in October 12, 2016.
Okay, so we've done it before.
We have done it before, yes.
I'm sorry. And when we when you looked at this and looked at the work that Crane had done before, assessing the building, doing the design review, getting some general idea of costs, if we were to go out and open up 3 or 2 or whatever other bid process, that entity would have to go through that look and see type of thing. But was it your kind of consensus among staff that using Crane in this instance is going to save us money on the architectural side, and we're going to use someone who's got experience and knowledge in dealing with San Marino and our sometimes very stringent desires?
Yes, as the finance officer, but also as a purchasing officer, when contracts such as this comes to my review, especially with the crane contract, I had to sit with the public works director and have the conversation in regards to what is our process and why are we waiving the bid process. So we have that communications. And then it's not only on cost, of course, it's combination of quality and cost. And so when I looked into, is there, besides the quality aspect, which the director has already expressed, and I'm not going to go through those bullets, but in regards to the cost aspect as well, yes, there are savings as in moving the project forward effectively and efficiently, being that we've used Crane in the past, and there's savings there, but also ultimately being that construction contracts in general, design-wise comes in about 10%, as the director has mentioned, it's 8.7%. I felt confident that giving it to Crane, waiving the bidding process was the right move to do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Back to...
Can I follow up with Director?
Let me just finish. I'm almost done. Back to...
Sorry, Director Chung, if you want to see, I'll have questions for you on this very issue. Please go ahead.
Back to the public input process. One of the concerns that I've talked to several people, they've called me, and when I've told them that all the information that we have out there shows that we will request public input, and they've been happy. But the one question that they have is, because most of these meetings are Zoom, some of the more senior residents of our community will not have an opportunity or access to that. Can we, can we as part of the public process, find a way to have a meeting or a series of, where maybe you have 20 people in at a time on a Saturday, where they could take a look at it and provide their input in a public safety way, publicly safe way, without Zoom and contractors, a way we can fit this in?
I'm actually going to take that question, and I'm probably going to need a little bit of help from the fire chief. My initial thought is probably no, that would be prohibited by the county's order. And if we're talking about the senior population, they tend to be more vulnerable in the COVID situations. That scares me a little bit, but we can try to figure out an alternate way. I understand what you're saying about Zoom. I have trouble with Zoom sometimes myself. We do have an email address set up that feedback can be provided, although I know that potentially has the same challenge, but we can try to do more personal outreach if people have concerns, and I can dialogue a little bit with the fire chief to see if there's any way to do that within the guidelines.
Even if it's a mailing with a form where they could put in their requests?
We could definitely do that.
That is, okay.
We definitely do that. It's just the in-person.
And I understand that, but we need to make sure that those that do not have access to Zoom or don't know how to work it, including people like myself, will have an opportunity to put in at least written comments about what they've seen. And I want to be robust in that area.
We can make that happen.
And my final question is, if on September 9th, I do not believe we've had enough public input, there's nothing precluding me to request that we extend public input another month.
Absolutely not, Council.
Okay, thank you, I'm done.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Vice Mayor Udi?
A couple of questions for the Finance Director, please. Paul, refresh my memory on the total reserve we have between the reserve and the capital improvement program. How much money is in the bank?
I should have prepared that for you too. I was not anticipating that question.
In April, it was $37.8 million. Is it
yes, that sounds about right. I was thinking in my mind 38 million, so that sounds about right.
Okay. And then our total annual operating budget, not capital improvement, but the operating budget this year is roughly 24-ish?
23.7 million.
Okay, so we have, 1.5 coverage in our reserve over the operating budget. And refresh my memory on the I don't want to say profit, that's the wrong word, but the revenue minus expenses, what do you think our contribution to the reserve will be this next year?
When I presented to council, I used $3.2 million. That was the number that we were anticipating to end the year at.
And then over the next 2 or 3 years, would a $5 million expense give you any concern?
Absolutely not, being that it was already inputted into the forecast when I presented it to council, so no.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. I did want to follow up, Director Chung, I had a question about the contract in 2016. I think you said that we dispensed with, can you tell me what that interchange and what you came up with when you did the research looking back into city records?
Yes, so it was the October 12th, 2016 city council meeting when the city council approved the contract with N.B. Chang and Associates. And that contract was for a PSA with, to provide assistance while, I believe at that time, we were transitioning or looking for a new finance director. So that contract was waived the 3 bidding process at that time.
And how much was the contract for? Approximately, if you can give me a ballpark, I've known.
I believe it was 24,000, but I should have printed that separate, but I don't have that in front of me now.
Okay, so the one time that we waived the bidding, so to speak, or getting multiple bids, was under the prior council in 2016. I'm sorry, I know Councilmember Talt and Councilmember Wong were on it then. When did you join council? That was during the start of their terms. And it was for, say the amount again?
Yeah, I'm checking, I could check that number. I don't want to just throw out a number. I'm thinking 24,000, but I could be wrong. But I could get you that number in 2 minutes.
That's
Okay,
also
just to get you an exact
a
number.
strange number because Misty Chang and her firm were with us for a good couple of years, and
Yes.
24,000 would have been in the city manager's authority. So there's something about that.
That's why I didn't want to make sure on record if I was giving you the wrong number, but I could.
That's
find
fine. Well, of course, the point, so between that approval at October 2016 and now, the city council or the city has not entered into any contracts without bids for professional services? That was the only thing you found?
Yes, that was the only one that I found, yes.
Okay.
That would be
And I
just-
have a question for the police chief next.
But-
You don't need to, I'm ready to ask questions. I've been,
Okay.
Chief, going back to the item that we approved on consent today, I don't know, now you're without a microphone. That's why I was trying to take care of this before. Did we discuss the purchase versus lease and the various costs with, for the adopted budget to procure the capital equipment for the police department during our budget process?
Yes?
Do you know, at that time, did you come forward with bids, if you will, or quotes? I know that, I think you had another, other of your management team or leadership team come and do the research on this. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but there's a lease and a buy option, and then within those, there were options that we've seen in the capital improvement, capital purchase portion of our budget. Is that right?
Mayor, we provided information on a lease option plan as part of the capital improvement plan. We also provided information on the purchase of police vehicles and motorcycles. I should say police cars and motorcycles as part of the budget process this year.
Okay, thank you. That was just, I wanted to make sure we had multiple options finance-wise. And now to Director Throne, I wanted to know, when did you or someone on staff first contact Crane to start work on the San Marino Center renovation project? Approximately, I don't need a date, a month and a year is fine.
We started working with Crane on those conceptual plans in the spring of 2019.
The spring of 2019. Okay. And who was the person on staff who decided to work with Crane?
That was a recommendation that I made to the city manager, and she signed off on the professional services agreement that we had for them because it was within her authority.
Okay. And at the time, when you decided to work or propose Crane, did you consider any other architecture or engineering groups?
At the time, we were looking for a very quick turnaround, and Crane was already working for the city with the Lacey Park project and had recently completed an ADA plan for Stoneman, and they had experience back in 2014. And so in order to...
At Stoneman?
At Stoneman.
Had they ever seen this building before?
They were familiar with it, and so when they came here, they did their inspections in order to develop their plans.
How were they familiar with the San Marino Center?
They came here and inspected the building and looked at the plans and interviewed staff.
Before?
In development of the conceptual plans. So
Right after, I'm saying before you went with them to develop conceptual plans, had they been to this building?
They may or may not have. I know that they've been working in the city since 2014, so they are familiar with a lot of our buildings.
Okay, thank you. And when that decision was made by staff, did anyone from, any staff members visit any of the projects designed by Crane? Any community centers? Any of these projects that they've done?
No, we did not.
Have you ever visited any of the projects that have been built by Crane? Or not built by Crane, sorry, designed and built by a contractor, but after Crane's work?
I've seen their resume, and I have firsthand knowledge as to the quality of work that they do here for the city, and that's very important when working with any professional consultant, is their abilities to understand you and to respond in a timely fashion and to be economical. So that was a lot of, yes, they had the experience, which is fabulous, but it's really your relationship with them in how they're delivering the product for the city is a very important selection criteria.
And the first-hand experience that you have had with them in the city is dealing with them on a proposal for ADA work at Stoneman that's never been done, and the restroom that's not built. Is there something else I'm unaware of? that
They
they've done
did
in the
the
city?
plans for the ADA improvements at Stoneman, which I was directly involved with as your city engineer. And then I was directly involved with them to develop the plans for the restroom, which is under construction.
Right, and not done, okay, I understand. Was the agreement to work with Crane at that time pursuant to council's direction?
It was pursuant to direction from the city manager that we were anticipating that San Marino Center, because it was on your priority initiatives as look at a plan for San Marino Center, it was important for us to have a conceptual layout in order to develop cost estimates and timelines such that when you entered into your 2020 priority initiative process, you had enough information to be able to make decisions as to whether or not to go forward.
Okay, and so when Crane started doing the concept work, was there any information, and was the rec department re-envisioning process completed?
It was going on simultaneously, and we did consult with recreation staff. We asked them, how are you currently using, how are the users using this facility? Because that was important in our development of a conceptual plan. We wanted to make the building useful for as many community groups as possible. You do have a limitation with the building. If you're keeping the exterior walls where they are, then you've got a limited amount of flexibility inside, especially if you want to keep the auditorium space and the old dining room spaces available for large gatherings. And really at the end of the day, you're working with creating storage, creating appropriate restrooms and office space.
Do you have the plans with you? The concept plans, are you familiar with them?
Familiar with them, I do not have them with me currently.
So if you and Crane work together with rec staff from spring of 2019, and I have the date of the concept plans being completed on August 1st, 2019. Would that be about right?
That's about right, yes.
Okay. And during that time, did you speak with any council members about the concept plans or the council as a whole?
No,
Did you speak with any community members or community groups?
I did not know.
And one more question, or a few more questions. What was Crane paid for their work on the concept drawings?
They were paid slightly less than $8,000.
And has there been any other payments to them regarding the San Marino Center?
No, that's current as of last week when I requested that report.
And is Crane an American Institute of Architects architectural group?
I believe that's what it says on his resume, yes.
And when there are professional services contracts, have you ever dealt with anybody who's a AIA member?
Yes.
In your
In my
process?
experience, yes,
Right.
of course.
And are you aware that they have standard form contracts that protect, that delineate the scope of work, and then their professional services, and they have certain liabilities that they take on, and it's a very detailed multi-page standard agreement that's part of contracts usually with architectural groups?
The AIA standard contract is architect-centric, meaning the architect's not responsible for anything, and it's very favorable to the architect. We use our standard as recommended and as required by the city attorney, our professional services agreement, which protects the city primarily, and also conforms to state law for indemnification and liability from the design. We do not use the AIA contract, as I mentioned. It's very one-sided for the architect.
Okay. And have you ever used it in your career as part of architectural services?
In my personal life, I do not like to use it because it's not client-friendly, and as an owner paying money to an architect, I want them to work for me, not me work for them.
I take that as a no, you've never used one in the other cities that you've worked at on projects?
We have always used the city attorney required consultant agreement contract.
Thank you. And then the other question is, my last questions have to do with the community input process. And I hear what other council members have said about having a public meeting, socially distanced, maybe outside to hear our community. Has there been any thoughts about being able to do that at the park, out in the thing, in any space at all, or this space for that matter, because we seem to be socially distancing and have more than 10 people here?
I think we'll be able to do something. I do have to look to my fire chief and my director of emergency services as to what we can and can't do within the health order and basic responsibility to take care of all of our residents. I think as Councilmember Tall suggested, there are some things that we can do besides just Zoom meetings. In-person meetings are very important to me as someone that runs projects. It's what I'm totally used to. This is very different, and it doesn't always solicit the best kind of feedback, because you don't get a lot of brainstorming, which you get when you have a lot of people in a room. But I will certainly work with the Director of Emergency Services and Fire Chief to see the best that we can do within the pandemic framework we have right now.
Right, and it seems like it hasn't gotten really any. You've gotten 2 comments or whatever so far, so it hasn't really worked. When is there going to be a notice or something outside in front, if you will, like a construction project? So also people who don't follow the city website and get city manager updates or really follow what we're supposed to be doing, which is protecting residents. When another way would be obviously to put signage out front. And is there any plan to do that in our public process input gathering?
That's an excellent suggestion, Mayor. If the council approves moving forward today, we'll get signs up so that we can make that passive advertisement of the project. That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you.
And also my concern is that we have both age and as well as language barriers that keep half of our population not comfortable with using a lot of the city. And I haven't seen any translated information or any translation of the video going out. So is there plans to do that? And how will we reach out to the other half of our community that might not be as well versed in English as we are?
Since we get the green light from you today, that will we can incorporate that. That's in part of an internal plan we have for the marketing of this project.
Well, hopefully we won't have a green light today, but at least whenever it's done, I would like to see it in 2 languages. That would be very important for our community. Okay, so that is the end of my questions, unless somebody has a follow-up. I see Councilmember Jacobowski.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up, and that was really helpful information looking at our historical perspective, so I appreciate it. When we were looking at Stoneman in 2014, and I believe 2 among us were on council at that point.
No.
Oh, sorry. I remember attending a number of city council meetings, and we have had a very, very long-term discussion in the city about the use of both the San Marino Center and Stoneman. And if I remember correctly, we were getting a lot of pressure from the community to decide what to do with Stoneman and what its condition was. And at that point, and again, you may have the document or somebody here can give us the historical look at this, but if I remember correctly, didn't we, perhaps Director Cervantes, didn't we look at ADA issues and construction concerns, deficits, if you will, and I think there might have been some concerns about the water, air conditioning, and so forth. And if I remember correctly, I think we got a pretty shocking number back. Can you just give us a few sentences on that?
I don't recall the number. I remember a $1.8 million number that came up as a result of that project, but ADA was a driver of that project. We did approach council several meetings to share with them the outcome of the surveying of that property. And if I recall correctly, we came down with a list of items that needed to be corrected, including ADA. There was the need to modify the electrical systems of the building, plumbing systems, mechanical systems, as well as look at, like, as I mentioned, ADA components and into correcting them as well. It even included fire suppression systems, as well as environmental services, for example, the cleaning up of lead and asbestos, if found, of course, at that time. When that information was last presented to the council, it was at that point tabled because of the overall cost of $1.8 million for that project. But to answer your question, it was ADA amongst other, what we consider to be sort of Band-Aids to the building.
So it was a pretty detailed.
Right.
And then my second question for Director Throne. I know that we have had Recreation Department liaisons, just as we have liaisons to, each of us council members has different liaison duties to different groups. Can you comment on your sharing of the proposed plan with the Recreation Department liaisons earlier this year?
Before we brought the project to council on June 5th, which was when you were going to be determining your capital improvement program, staff did meet with the liaisons, showed them the plans. This was probably in early March. Got their initial feedback as to direction and things to consider, much of which is actually in the schedule and what you're seeing today. They were very supportive of getting the plans out that month in advance of the meeting so that the community could see what was going on, what was being considered on a conceptual basis. And they were very helpful in providing council insight from their perspective as liaisons, also being involved in recreation. They ask questions about usage and the general questions you would expect from your client asking about the project.
Can you talk a little bit? I'd like to hear what my colleagues gave you in terms of input in just getting this initial piece out. So if you remember from that discussion, I think it would be helpful for us to know if they were more saying, sure, go ahead, or have you thought about just a few of those things?
Well, not wanting to put words in the liaisons' mouths, they're probably the most qualified to share with you the direction and their comments that they make to staff.
Well, the one thing that I recall is, number one, I was late to the meeting, and I still apologize for that. Number two, we met at Stoneman, if my memory serves me correct, and my principal concern was making sure that we get this information out to the public right away, and that we have sufficient public input before we begin construction. So my concern was, I could sit there and look at a conceptual drawing and just give you my thoughts, but that wasn't good enough. I wanted to hear from the public, and that's when ultimately I think you guys came back and provided us with the insight as to how you, not as the liaisons, but to the city councils, how you intended to do that.
And the meeting was also then when the article in the Tribune.
Right. Right. I immediately called the Tribune to get that information out.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wong?
Yes, I just want to know how much time we save from the formal bidding process if we are going to bid for an architect.
For a project of this nature and the components of it, it would be a 3-month process to solicit proposals, evaluate proposals, and then bring a recommendation to the council.
Thank you.
Councilmember Tall?
I have nothing further. You guys have answered all my questions satisfactorily. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Udine?
No further questions, thank you.
And I just wanted to clarify, since the capital budget request has us with $400,000 for this year, budget year, which was approved. Initially, do you recall whether the entire package, the 400,000 and the 4 million for the construction, was proposed for 2020/21, the current budget cycle?
We only propose $400,000. It is not my practice as your director to throw in a construction budget unless I absolutely know what it is. And the council may be aware that my practice is to hold that number as a future number until such point that I actually have bids in hand or a final set of plans that I've done a final cost estimate on. And then I can bring that to the council to say, okay, this is what we're anticipating the cost to be.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a real specific question. When we first received the capital budget request, was the $400,000 estimate for engineering or professional services, and was the construction also in it? Do you recall?
No, it was not. They were in separate years.
So it's always been that 400,000 estimate was for our capital budget for this year, and a construction estimate is in our budget, as we've heard, an estimate, I understand, for 21-22, along with the construction management fee.
Yes.
So that's this year 400,000, and we approve that. Next year 4.4.
That is correct, Mayor.
All right, so we have never voted to include the project in this year's budget.
You voted to include the design portion of the project in this year's budget. If you proceed ahead as being recommended today, then as the finance director said, when we bring you an award of construction contract in the spring, that will be your opportunity to then appropriate funds from the capital improvement fund reserves to start the construction.
And do we, I guess this is a financial question for Director Chung, do we then amend the budget next March or April, depending on that?
Yes, we would have to amend the budget at that time.
So we'll have to amend the budget 9 months into the year if we proceed at the proposed pace?
Yes.
And then do we circulate it and publish it to the community, and we go through the same process that we do for a budget approval?
No, the council has the authority to appropriate the budget during the year, so that will just be the regular process of just appropriating the budget at the time.
Okay, in an unlimited amount. It doesn't matter if it's millions of dollars or not.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Mayor, just a quick follow-up on the question you had on the MV Chang Associate. I just wanted to make sure on record to be clear that when I said 24,000, I knew I had a number in my mind. It was $23,330 per month, not to exceed per month. The whole contract itself was for $279,960. Just wanted to make sure.
$280,000 for the year.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And just one more thing to Director Throne. When the conceptual plans were done that we've released to the community this June, they were done last August, is that right?
Yes.
And that was before we had met about the re-envisioning or decided on a plan and gotten even the feedback from the survey done of residents?
It was being done concurrently. I'm not exactly sure what the schedule is for the revisioning. Perhaps our...
Just I could probably answer that faster, but since she doesn't have a mic, I would just say some of the portions were done. The Blue Ribbon Committee was done, that sort of thing, but we had not yet started the survey.
Okay, and so it was reported to us in January 31st of 2020. That's what
the survey,
timeline is?
the needs assessment from Green Plague were presented to you then.
Yeah, it was presented in January, but it started in October.
October of 2020?
Yes.
Okay, which is...
No.
2019, excuse me.
19, sorry.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. At this time, we have a volume of comments already received, so I don't know, should we just proceed with, I have asking Acting City Clerk Merlot to address those comments that we've received in group. I mean, obviously there's 50-something pages, And I think we've all gotten phone calls and texts and more emails at home. So if you could summarize what's been turned in as comments.
Of course. So we have received 35 comments via email and mail through the beginning of this meeting, and all of which express some concern over the approval of this item. These comments were distributed to council, posted on the city website, and are also included in the public copy of the agenda packet in the lobby. So I'll read a summary of all the comments received, but would note that this list is a compilation of all the comments from all the correspondence and not necessarily everything being in each particular comment. And after I read the summary, I'll then read a list of the names of everyone who submitted those comments. The concerns covered 5 major items. The first concern is the bidding process. And these concerns included the need to have 3 bids, that the bidding process is a potential legal problem, that there are other more qualified architectural firms that must be given the opportunity to be considered, find a firm that is knowledgeable and skilled in community engagement, and there's a sentiment that this has already been done and decided. The second concern is timing, and under that the comments were, is this the right time to do it? What is the big hurry? The library project included a lot of time for discussion of drawings and ideas. This shouldn't be fast-tracked. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Take more time on this project and allow time to finalize the future of recreation and make a decision on Snowman. Why start a new project when the Lacey Park restrooms have not been finished? Why is this a priority over other neglected maintenance? The third issue was community input, and those concerns included the community must be given more than 3 weeks to provide the city with meaningful input before spending millions of taxpayer dollars, 8 weeks minimum of public input. Staff is pushing the project and the staff seems to run the city without meaningful involvement from the council. The virtual tour was vague. We were hoping to understand the proposed plans and scope of work from the video. We need an analysis of how the center would be used, who would use it, fees, maintenance, etc. There's no need for the compressed schedule that bypasses public input. We want to understand the scope of work. People thought this would be a minor remodel, but now concerned it's a major remodel. The next issue is design. There was concern about the design not being consistent with the library, schools, and architecture of surrounding neighborhoods. Desire to protect the trees, and people agree that it needs refreshing, but wouldn't expect it to be a major overhaul. The final concern was cost. How can we spend money on it now when we don't know what a post-COVID community center will look like? How much does it cost? Where is the money coming from? And the people that submitted comments were Ghassan Romani, Dale Pedersen, Karen Habib, Andrew Coe, Wendy Pilko, Wendy Greenleaf, Jordan Solito, Fran Panuska, David Hensley, Kathy Osageda, Diane Lamb, Jennifer Barbary, Rick Copeland, Doris Christensen, Hal Harigian, Laureen Chang and Peter Brockett, Mona Romani, Stephanie Johnson, Mike and Lorraine Leva, Tom Sachs and Carolyn Chapman, Susie Moser, Jason Omori, Matt Omori, Emma Tam, William Tam, Don Kroll, Diana Nixon, C. Frederick and Layla Milkey, David Omori, Lori Barlow, Joyce Getsuli-Spatnage, Dan Grifka, Susan Gundell, Benjamin Miller, Shannon and Kevin Snare. I've also received one comment during the meeting, one email. If you'd like, I can go ahead and read that one.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This email is to express my opposition to awarding Crane Architectural Group the renovation of the San Marino Center for several reasons. First, we need bids from other firms, especially those that are located closer to the project. We had many major issues with the long-delayed Lacey Park bathroom project, including the fact that the contractor was located in Long Beach and had major problems getting workers to travel to San Marino. Second, the proposed design is not consistent with Kroll Library, the surrounding buildings, or the neighborhood. Third, we need more community input as we did with the famed Metro 710 project. Thank you for letting me express my strong opinion. I hope you will take my objections seriously and consider them. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to our wonderful city. Be safe. And that is from Margot Manilescu.
Thank you. We also have a person, I believe, public comment here
We do have someone on Zoom.
as well.
Yeah, we do have one speaker request for in-person as well as someone asking to speak on Zoom. Would you like
Okay.
to do in-person first?
Yes, please.
Okay. We have a comment from Diane Lamb.
Uh-oh. You know what, Ms. Lamb, if you step back for a minute, they'll adjust it and then clean it before you speak. Thank you.
My name is Diane Lamb. Well, first, I'm sorry. Good morning, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Diane Lamb. I have raised my family here in San Marino for the past 18 years. I speak today on behalf of many friends whom I have met through our children, San Marino schools, and volunteer work. We are active San Marino families who have all taken advantage of what living in San Marino offers, and because of our involvement with this community, we have spent countless hours in this very building. Like you, our elected city council members, we work hard to make this a community we are proud of. As I mentioned in my letter to you this week, I am an interior designer specializing in libraries and educational environments. And over the years, I too have found a way to give back to the city. Which brings me to why I stand here before you. We are grateful that the city is considering a new community center, and we know that you have spent time and energy planning it. But what you didn't know back then was that we would be faced with a global pandemic in March that is still with us now and for the foreseeable future. Your idea for this community center was based on a previous reality. Shouldn't we step back and reconsider what once sounded like a good plan may not be what this community will need moving forward post-COVID? We are strongly opposed to the current plan and the agreement with Crane Architectural Group as the architect of record for the following reasons. The COVID-19 global pandemic is causing businesses to rethink how space will be utilized in the post-COVID world. Major companies such as Google are stopping in their tracks to reimagine how people will interact, collaborate, and congregate in the future. Community centers may look totally different from how they look today because the recreation programs that typically operate within a center may no longer be what the community wants. Community centers in the post-COVID world may want to include more outdoor classroom spaces, larger rooms to spread out, conference rooms with state-of-the-art video and audio conferencing capabilities. All these ideas and more must be explored. The city should use this COVID time to get feedback from all the residents and do this right. I know that you believe you've sufficiently sought feedback from your constituents. But voices in this community are yearning to be heard beyond the City Club, Public Safety, Planning, and Lacey Park commissions. I lead a philanthropic group that supports the LA Philharmonic and that would benefit greatly from a well-designed community center. And there are so many more groups, large and small, like mine, that need to have a seat at the table.
Ms. Lamb, can I ask you to, I'm here. Can I ask you to wrap up or if you will, the 3-minute timer had gone off.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is not a time to rush into a construction project and spend $4 million. Other cities are putting a hold on all projects not yet under construction. Supply chains have been disrupted and construction costs are going up. However, the city can take advantage of the situation in regards to professional design services. I know, being in the business myself, that if you went out for public bid for professional design services, you would get the best architectural firms in Los Angeles competing for this project. Lastly, I implore you to reconsider your plans and allow San Marino to experiment with new ideas until we reach a solution that exceeds our community's initial expectations. I guarantee that this will result in a design that is more resilient because we will be anticipating the future as opposed to designing for today or for the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will go to anyone who would like to speak online.
Ms. Hollingsworth, you can go ahead.
Can you hear me, Amanda?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm Liz Hollingsworth, and I live on Darby Road in San Marino. I'm currently a member of the Library Board of Trustees. I served on the Blue Ribbon Committee, studying the Recreation Department carefully. I'm also the former principal of Carver Elementary School, and I led a multi-million-dollar renovation of the school and was intimately involved in the renovation of the other schools. I'm asking you to vote no on this agenda item and not hire an architectural firm at this time. I'm advocating to you for an open process before any firm is hired. An open process of community input to develop your vision for the San Marino Center that reflects that input, and then hire a firm. As a member of the Board of Trustees, I was really pleased to get an email yesterday from the Community Services Director that we are going to have a special presentation about the San Marino Center. We asked for that at our meeting this week on Monday. Several of our board members communicated that our input is very important because of the future connections between the rec department and the library, and in the absence of a recreation commission. I'm really encouraged with the meetings and the meetings that are on the schedule for other boards, but it does seem like a rushed afterthought rather than a beginning point. There's been plenty of time since the basis of this presentation was received a year ago. Conversations at the city council level do not equate to transparency. A formal process of gathering community input is a first step. You're just now formally inviting public input. I urge you to gather that input first. The Planning Commission report will then set the stage to use that input. And until Mrs. Lamb talked, I didn't hear anybody talking about how to use the community input. The Crane proposal states they'll attend meetings, but it doesn't state how they will use the community input. You need to create your vision that reflects the community input into the design, that talks about the function, the use, the facade, and also the connections to the library. The function in the current plan seems to be a building with a lot of spaces for adults. There are no spaces for children, who are very important users of the recreation programs. Now, as a library trustee, I was so pleased last year when you approved the Barth Audio Visual Project, about $20,000 as a capital improvement. I'm not talking about the lighting, I'm talking about the audio visual project. And Public Works did a request for proposals for that upgrade in February. But the project was scrapped by Public Works because they only got one bidder. It was for goods and services. It went through the bidding process. But it was turned down because of only one bidder. How can that be? How can I reconcile that with now you're going ahead and using only one vendor, waiving the typical process, And yet this is a more important and more massive project. How can that be called transparent? It may be allowed per code, but it doesn't make sense. The San Marino Center is going to be the home of the rec department. Hopefully, we're going to get a new community services permanent director soon. Yet no input formally from the rec department is scheduled. The rec commission last met in February. These are citizens who can better articulate the function and the use and the needs of the facility. That has to come first. Not including them doesn't make any sense. And it makes me question the sincerity of the community input process. There's still time to ask staff to make a special effort to include rec commissioners past and present, Blue Ribbon Committee, and other friends of the rec department.
Ms. Hollingsworth, the buzzer has gone off, and I just wanted to ask you if you could make
I didn't hear the buzzer because I work with many members of the community during the school renovations. And I work closely with community members, parents, architects, contractors. And I learned that in an open process throughout, sharing our vision creates community buy-in. The buy-in is a key to your success now, and the buy-in now is a key to your success through the project. Take your time now. At the beginning, you're gonna pay off in the end with a project that better reflects our community. Thank you for listening, and thank you, council members, for your ongoing volunteer service to our community.
Thank you, Ms. Hollingsworth. Do we have any other public comments? Not here, but online? Anybody else with a hand raised?
No, oh, yes, excuse. We do have one more. Mr. Romani, I see you. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Ghassan Romani. I live on Oakland Avenue in San Marino. As President Ronald Reagan used to say, there we go again. Another rushed project, signed by staff behind closed doors, no residents' input, submitted for urgent approval. This happened in the city many, many times before. I'm sure you remember that it happened with Metro in 2018. And now we are again rushed to approve funds for an architectural company. Again, without residents' input. And no time for competitive bidding. But this time we're citing an existing service agreement. How creative can one be? And I wonder, why is this an emergency like the speakers before me? It feels like we are doing plastic surgery while we're overlooking the individual's basic health needs in the middle of a major pandemic. Now I direct my question to Councilman Ude. As a seasoned businessman, and as our upcoming mayor, how can we change our current business model in the future to make it transparent and inclusive of San Marino residents? Therefore, a more successful MO, where the residents are the decision makers. I urge you to vote no on this item on the agenda today. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you, Dr. Romani. Do we have any other public comments online or email or hands raised?
Let me check the email while we give everyone one more minute to see if they want to speak on Zoom. Do not have any further emails. And I do not see any other requests to speak on Zoom. We do not have any further comments on Zoom.
Thank you very much. So then seeing that everybody who wanted to participate, virtually or in person, has had a chance to speak on this, I'll bring this back to council for our discussion. And do we have any comments or questions that have come up? Council Member Jacobowski?
No questions?
Or comments?
Oh, comments? It's usually pretty comfortable for me to speak without notes, but this has been an issue of huge significance to our community and has had some additional concerns since we last met on this. My comments are not part of a backroom deal, staff manipulation, nor shenanigans. It is important to remind you that each of my esteemed colleagues on City Council serves with no compensation nor expectation of quid pro quo. I speak only from my heart. In my 2.5 years on City Council, even before, I have been attending the budget planning meetings for about 5 years. Each time we have those meetings, we address close to $30 million in spending. That's a lot of money. I can't tell you how sad it feels when we don't see community members coming out in any significant numbers to give input as to how things are going to be run in their city with their tax dollars. Additionally, the comment was made that we only had 2 comments earlier on. I hadn't thought in the detail that Councilmember Talt had about the number of times this year this has been mentioned. And for my own benefit, I've spent a lot of hours this week reviewing the documents that I have referenced. And for any of you who either viewed or are part of the April City Council meeting when Interim Director Espinoza gave her vision for the future of the Recreation Department, taking into account what we have learned from this community, I remember at that meeting saying I was giddy with excitement. Our first 2.5 years together as a council have been productive. We have honored the values and wishes of our citizens and passed motions and approved ordinances that are important to our residents. We have set aside a capital finance reserve to address large projects that occur in an aging city. Through our intense finance focus with Vice Mayor Udy and I as liaisons, we have ensured that our existing $18 million capital projects fund, by the way, which has increased since its inception, is available for projects just like this. With the city well over 100 years old, we are aware of streets, sidewalks, sewers, and yes, buildings from the 1950s that we own that are in desperate need of update. I have such a problem with throwing good money after bad, whether it's the San Marino Center or the future Albatross of Stoneman. Just as we plan in our families, we have the cash to go forward with this project and give our community that space for programs and events. By keeping this capital projects fund, we still have a significant set aside for our budget should we ever need it. The one item that has dogged us, I feel that we have worked very, very well as a council together, but the one item that has dogged us was defining what recreation means to our city and what our San Marino should be in our community. As you had heard earlier, this discussion has been going on all year, and we have looked at fresh practices that have been established elsewhere. And along with those fresh practices, there are projects that are going on during this COVID time, and there is discussion that has been input into those project designs, taking into account future issues. And yes, I totally concur, it would be wise to keep those design concepts in place because we don't know how long we will be dealing with this. Although today we are voting on one issue only, whether to go with Crane. On a separate note, I feel so very, very strongly about the community involvement in this process, both the interior and exterior of this building. As we look around us right now, I wish this was a more complex building with a bigger footprint, but here we are. This is what we are dealing with. It would be delightful to have something that we could get significantly more creative with. As you see, we have accordion doors that can break down the rooms. We have a stage. I wish we had something that could offer us greater options, but unfortunately, with our footprint and where we are located, this does not allow for that type of complexity. In wanting, as I said, as a side note, the input from the community, I think it is crucial not only to include those groups listed in our packet, but I would love to hear from the San Marino Rotary, the Historical Society, the San Marino Chinese Club, particularly for their partnership, PTA affiliates, Friends of Recreation, anyone who has an interest in the future of recreation, the San Marino School District in the broadest interpretation, anyone who believes they feel strongly about the library and our partnership next door. And last, I'd like to see a second well-advertised town hall to get every single bit of input that is out there. We do want to own this as a community. Separate from the design concept, we need to have a vendor before we can gather our data. We have had numerous reports. We've had 2.5 years of discussion. And at this point, I'd like to comment on our Park and Public Works Director, Director Throne, who is a licensed civil engineer. And he arrived at San Marino after multiple failed attempts by the city and extensive search costs and possibly even costly prior contractor errors. While overseeing an ongoing annual multi-million-dollar repavement program exceeding the proposed cost of the San Marino Center in sum, he has stayed within budget allocations, has not required change orders requiring city approval, and has not gone past contract deadlines. I want to again comment on the differentiation between an architect and a contractor. He has a good working relationship with Crane Architecture based on the Lacey restroom bidding and architectural work. Relationships, as every one of us knows, are very, very important in all the work we do. Crane offered a successful bid after 2 previous attempts to gain a bid on or under budget failed. They complied with the design concept required without a challenge or issue. While the contractor, the subsequent person or company involved with the Lacey Park restrooms, did not perform the construction as agreed, Director Throne properly documented and presented his findings for the city's non-performance bond to be enacted, thus avoiding a costly lawsuit. We each come from our own previous sum of work and life experiences, and having served almost 18 years of government employment, I appreciate and support the faith required in senior leadership decisions. Director Throne has not caused me reason to question his knowledge and capabilities on any topic, from the huge expense of wastewater removal to slurry sealing. Regarding COVID, I am certain that he is aware of what is going on in terms of communities responding out there. Should we find, if we do go forward with Crane, that we, for any reason, have made a poor decision, we can cancel our contract immediately, even without cause, and open a bidding process. I am comfortable in hearing our two recreation liaisons offering their support to this project and the plan to, again, respond to extensive community input. Finally, I would like to briefly reflect upon my experience, first as a member of the San Marino Planning Commission, then as the chair. A well-known and respected architect frequently brought plans for large boxy teardowns before the body. We asked if they had already been told through the Planning and Building Department that even though their project met code, it would most unlikely not meet the criteria set forth in design review guidelines and vote. This architect knew full well, but explained that their job was to bring forward their client's wishes. A good architect listens well and fully honors their client's wishes. We have no shortage of interested and invested clients in our dear city, and I am confident that that process will be fully honored. Again, the relationship between our administrative managers and heads with this outside body is of crucial importance to me. Further, following the signing of a contract, it would be my motion that I would hope my colleagues would support, that we would have a very specific body, which I could detail, set up as an ad hoc committee, and there would be a set process for this selection, and this group would receive the draft of the architectural plan for review before it went to City Council. They would receive the final plans before going to City Council, and they would be available during the entire architectural process, meeting at least bi-weekly. By no means do I feel that we should be cutting out the community in this very, very important process, but I do have to concur with the opinions that have been presented so far, that we have had this mentioned at almost every city council meeting, and we have talked for years, and I know it has brought every one of us frustration about how we have not moved forward in moving both our recreation department and our San Marino Center along. I am confident that with this extensive list of groups being involved, we will indeed get the best project. Thank you.
Councilmember Wong?
Well, I think we have been very transparent in the past 2 years. As the staff has stated, we've been discussing about this matter. And, you know, we started because we want to provide the best service to our community. If you look around, you know, this building is pretty beat up, and I think we're doing a disservice for our residents when they have to use this facility. And I guess we didn't really, I mean, it's not that we don't care about public input. We did, but maybe the public didn't know about it because they trust this council. And we want to proceed with this project because we know that the cost of construction continues to increase every year. And with the taxpayers' money, we don't want to put it in the bank and let the bank use that money to make money. I know that we shouldn't rush into this decision because we want to use this facility for the next 50 years. But the condition of this building is really shabby as, a former mayor said before, we always like to keep San Marino 50 years behind if we can. And this is the only place that's still 50 years behind, so maybe we should keep it that way. And the people have spoken, and I have heard, and I think Mrs. Diane had a very good point about the standard that we're going to have post-COVID. And perhaps, no experts have ever faced this before, and I don't think Crane would know how to design a facility, going forward without any experience. And I think that we should not rush this thing. We should wait and see, not because of the cost or whatever, but because we don't know what kind of difficulties waiting for us ahead, and how we should deal with the social distancing in the future with this virus. So I think that I would rather wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tall?
Yes, it's nice to hear Councilman Wayne channeling Paul Crowley today on the 50. I would like to address the concerns about the project. I appreciate all the public input. I've received many emails. I've responded to some of the emails. I've had telephone conversations. And one of the things I have discovered is there's a lot of misinformation being floated out there. I saw the email that went to many of these people to encourage them to send in one of the form responses. And in that email, it claimed that we had hired a contractor, and that's why I asked the question. We have not. That is, as is so popular today, to state that as fake news. We've not hired a contractor to perform this yet. That will be done, the actual contractor for the building itself will be done through the public bidding process. And I think one of the problems with the public bidding process that you see is what happened at the bathroom, where we went with the lowest bidder, and the lowest bidder ended up not being able to do the job. And that's one of the reasons why you have this public service or professional services agreement exception, is you want to be able to have the relationship, make sure that they're qualified to do it before you go ahead and agree with them, especially as something as important as engineering and architecture. On the issue of transparency, as I think that has been pointed out by staff, we've been transparent about our plans and what we are doing and how we are moving forward. We've discussed this in open meetings since January 2020. The issue has been the subject of 3 Tribune articles, including 2 front page articles in May of 2020. And I do find it ironic that that these articles telling people what we plan on doing are the very same paper that just yesterday the Concerned Citizens of San Marino had an ad claiming we had not been transparent. I just find that ironic. And I do understand, as Ms. Hollingsworth pointed out, that that's not the transparency that she's talking about. She's talking about transparency in what and how we're going to do that. That's called public input. And I agree, and I've stated since the beginning, that we need to get and have a robust residents' input. We've discussed at the meetings that I've attended every time, we need to make sure that we have sufficient public input. And I hope people like Ms. Hollingsworth and Ms. Lamb participate in that public input with their suggestions as to how the interior and exterior of this renovation should look. There will be 7 opportunities to do that coming up. And so I think the complaint about a lack of public input to date is a bit premature. I think that we should look at what has happened with that public input, ways in which to expand the public input to make sure, including looking at what this should look like post-COVID. I think that's everything that we do need, and I agree with that concept. And as I mentioned, I have discussed with at least one person the problem that exists, even without COVID, of getting some of our senior citizens to have an opportunity to provide input. And that's why I do believe it's important to find a way to allow them who use it in senior yoga, bridge, and some of our other programs, so they will have an opportunity to provide the input. But really, that's not the issue right now. Public input will come. The issue is whether and in my impression about how things are done, we do need to retain the architect who will listen to the public and input these ideas that the community has. We are not tearing down the center. We are starting from scratch. We're doing a rehabilitation. And the only issue that we're addressing today is whether we believe Crane should be the architect for the rehabilitation project. This is a decision that we would have to make in any regards if we were to go out and get 3 bids, whether or not the person is qualified. And in my personal opinion, just like I said last meeting, Crane is suited to perform this. They did this for Stoneman. They know San Marino. They have worked with City Hall before. It's nice being able to have an architect that you could call up and who will see your number and pick it up, and you'll be able to talk to them. Crane has that type of relationship with the city. And the work that I've seen them perform, at least looking at things online, I have not gone down to Buena Park and looked at it, but the things that I've seen in their resume online on renovations of projects look fabulous and use the uses and public input that is important in this community. There is no reason in my mind not to start the process of public input. And to get there, we should hire the contractor. We should hire the architect based upon everything we've taken a look at, and immediately start a robust public input. And I will tell you, I will not vote on September 9, 2020 or later for a project that has not had a reasonable and sufficient opportunity for public input. So if it comes a day where you're asking us to vote on a project, we better make darn sure that we've used all our available resources to have the public input. But I would support hiring Crane today.
Vice Mayor Udi?
Yeah, thank you. I don't feel like we're rushing into this project at all. It's been on the radar screen for over 2 years, and the decision today is whether to use Crane as the architect or not. This is not approving a design. So when I hear and I think you need to have the architect in place before you gather all the public input. And I agree with Mr. Talt that I think if we don't have robust public input and answer all those questions, none of us are going to vote for the design. And I believe Crane has the experience. I believe that since this is a renovation and not a knockdown and start over, it puts some handcuffs on the flexibility that you do have, because you got the existing walls. We have the architectural look of the library that we need to align with. So I think this is going to be a fairly straightforward process. I also appreciate the comments of the support for Director Throne. I have a lot of confidence in you and your expertise, and if you have a relationship with Crane and if they've done good work for us in other cities, that speaks very highly to me. So I too think we should move forward and get the public input and make this something we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Udi. I first want to bring up the issue of the legality of this, and I didn't know we were doing our final comments. I thought we were having a discussion, so I apologize for going out of order. But I'm looking at the ordinance that we approved at our June meeting, and it has language, and if you want to pass this down, or take, and I want to talk about this with council members as well as with our city attorney, because I don't think we could proceed on this today without 3 bids. And we approved the ordinance number 0-20-1366 at the recommendation of staff. This was just 2 meetings ago, or 2 or 3 meetings ago. And I didn't copy the entire thing because you guys can find it online, or I'm sure you're familiar with it because we read it. But this deals with the procurements greater than $30,000, and it specifically says written notices inviting bids for procurement of goods and written requests for proposals to procure services shall be provided to at least 3 vendors and to all vendors requesting to receive, so that's more than 3. And this applies to contracts for services. And so even if this is outside of our normal public project and all past experience, which back to 2016, we've always had 3 bids on services, and except for that time where we had an ongoing relationship in 2016. Since that time, we've always had 3 or more bids, I assume, for services and contracts. And I don't think it would be legal for us to enter into this today without that informal process and without receiving at least 3 bids. So I don't know how this is proceeding, and I wanted to discuss that with my council members and with the city attorney now that we're here before making my final statement as everybody else did.
Is that got the updated?
This is the updated code. This is what we just adopted. Right. I copied the page.
I just don't know.
This supersedes everything else that came before because we just adopted it a month and a half ago.
Right. I just wasn't.
Yeah, there's just so you're aware, and this unfortunately only has the pages, but I see at the top, Director of the Department undertaking the procurement determines in writing that the goods and services are available only from one source or that best interest of the city are served by from one source, or that the best interests of the city are served by dispensing with competitive bids. And I think so that exception still exists, but I can't tell because I've only been handed 1 page of this ordinance.
I believe that does continue to exist. Of course, as has already been pointed out, because this contract is significantly higher than $30,000, it's certainly up to the pleasure of the council whether you wish to go ahead and award it or not. But you have the authority to dispense with the bidding process should the council choose to. If the council chooses not to and isn't satisfied that the best interests of the city are served as is set forth by the code, then the council certainly can request 3 bids. It's entirely the pleasure of the council.
Thank you.
Do you have the paragraph 2? Because paragraph 2 is the paragraph that this is, and it looks like it retains the same exception that we're operating under today.
Yes, you want me to pass this down?
Yeah, if I could just take a look at it and make sure that I'm not misstating anything or leaving something incomplete.
Well, I'm going to just make a statement, and I don't have the language here, but I don't think it's in the best interest of the city to enter into any contract, particularly of this magnitude, that's over $350 or approximately $350,000 without 3 bids, period. This is not something that we're buying with our trusted provider, some services that have been ongoing, such as the past accountant that happened in 2016. And since that time, the city council has always had 3 bids. And this is something that's so important that there needs to be at least 3 bids involved before we enter into this agreement. And so I feel strongly, we all live here in San Marino, and we wouldn't be serving on the city council today if we didn't love it. And we're being asked to approve an architect who's going to make the design plans based upon prior conceptual drawings that have no community input. This is for a community center that's for community. Thank you. And we've done it without any community being involved thus far. And I think the San Marino Center sits in the heart of San Marino, and its renovation, rehabilitation, remodel, however you want to characterize it, should be the best that it should be for our community, the residents of it. That requires significant involvement from San Marino residents, as well as the competing bids, that I think is our fiduciary responsibility to all residents. Those are necessary parts before we enter and continue forward. In order to get the best architect, in order to get the best contractor, in order to get the best community input, all of this needs to be done with great care and the amount of time necessary to achieve those goals. Only then will we have discharged our responsibility as City Council. I think it's wrong to contract with Crane for architectural services without any other bids. Full stop. I think our San Marino Code and California state law as well, which we haven't talked about, the government code, requiring all architectural and engineering services procured pursuant to a fair competitive process. And I'm sure you guys got the letter. Government Code Section 4529-12 mandates that we all get a chance to, the process has to include bidding, competitive bidding. It would be a mistake to rush the community engagement process. There is no urgency. The city should take time to collaborate with our residents and community, and having, whether it's 5, 6, or 7 online Zoom meetings and a video and online input only through an email address is not robust community. And the fact that we're going to try to do this in 3 to 4 weeks, to me, is unacceptable. I don't think there's a hurry. COVID-19 precautions may be in place for 6 or 9 months or more. We haven't put this into our budget for this year, so I think it's unacceptable that we would enter into a $4 million, approximately estimated $4 million budget addition in March or April. And while San Marino is in good financial shape right now, it's one of the few governments that is. When it's time to proceed, that good financial shape will mean that we will have our choice of architects, we will have our choice of contractors, and we will have a choice of low bid options that are better for our community once we've spent the time to find out their needs and wants. And that will be whether this goes to bid in April or later. It's all in our influence and control, and it's also not going to make economic difference because other cities and other municipalities will not be in better shape than us by then. So we still will have the upper hand in negotiations. The city actually needs this space right now to use, and I think we're going to need this for the next year. I know that organizations are having a struggle to find places to meet, and this right now is the biggest room with the most space to have meetings and have other groups and benefit our schools and benefit our own city users, a rec department and things like that, because it does have the space. That's not going to happen at the Barth room. This is the space we should be using during COVID and not rushing to enter into construction and then make this off limit too. We just about having a meeting at Lacey Park or somewhere in the parking lot, but that will be the only space left if we enter into a construction process in March or April. And I'm not sure that we will have our community fully vaccinated or where we will be in the COVID pandemic then. So to move quickly is an unwise decision. I also don't think there's been transparency or accountability And I think that's needed when we spend such a large sum as 4.8 estimated $1 million. And that estimate is from Crane. But we only have that estimate because we've only had one person that we've worked with. Such a significant expenditure of taxpayer funds requires complete involvement, transparency, and accountability. I don't think running a newspaper article or putting things on a website even reaches a majority of our population, nor does it give them an opportunity to involve themselves and comment. It's our fiduciary responsibility to ensure that we have adequate public input. And meetings by Zoom and comments only by email are not adequate. They're not appropriate for the demographics of our community with higher ages and language issues, and it does not allow for meaningful resident input if you can only type something online. I also think that Crane's design is flawed. The exterior does not blend with Kroll Library, nor with the middle school, Huntington Middle School, which is historic, nor with the neighborhood of elegant homes surrounding it, I truly believe. Moving ahead with them would be a mistake, as their plan entirely changes the exterior from an unassuming, understated traditional building by a local architect who is noteworthy in the 1950s and who actually is a resident. And the building is listed on San Marino's Historic Resources Survey as a potential historic resource, which should be respected, precisely because of its exterior. And I know we've heard that the exterior has been changed over time, but I did find a picture from 1951 in the newspaper that I'd like to share with my colleagues, and you can see from this that it looks exactly the same. Can you pass that on? Can you pass that down, and I have an extra copy for city manager with the record? It is the same building. That was from the newspaper, local newspaper, in 1951. So the changes that have happened, adding a pipe here and a bad air conditioning unit there, have not fundamentally changed this potential historic resource. And truly it would take an architectural consultant, which we do not have, who's well-versed in historic preservation, to even make a judgment as to what the exterior should look like and whether it's changed so much as to lose its status. And that has not happened. We haven't even dealt with that issue. As the two architects who have commented thus far, who are San Marino residents, have said, this is a mishmash of architectural design details. It's inappropriate, it's out of place in San Marino, and it's too modern. Never in any discussion did City Council direct that the renovation necessarily include an exterior redesign. As a matter of fact, in reflecting back, the City Council agreed not to tear down the building. We said to fix what needs to be fixed and update the facility to meet the community's needs. None of that is reflected in the plan that was fully completed by August 1st of 2019. And I think it's best to discard it and start over again, save our taxpayers' money, and focus on the inside of this building and how it will be used for future. Our obligation is to our residents who have elected us to listen to them and exercise the highest degree of financial oversight when we spend their money in our city. From everything we've heard today, the testimony, phone calls, emails, it's clear that residents are against proceeding without a plan for community input. And these are the ones that we've heard from. To say that there are only 37 or 35 comments and the additional ones today, and that that's even the start of being adequate, and that people have been informed, is a mistake. All we've heard is everybody is against proceeding with this plan, against Crane's choice, reaching an agreement with them. And the most disturbing to me is the fact that we've had these plans since last August, completed at the direction of staff and working with staff. That was August 1st, 2019. and yet they were not released to the public or to any of us until this June, or May, I guess the end of May of 2020. If those plans had actually been disclosed and released, we would not even be in the situation we are today. The community would have had a year of robust community input and involvement, and we would be here able to approve an architectural services contract with a fully developed plan that has community input and a task force and design recommendations, and hopefully a great process that would have involved our community. And I think it's a travesty if we proceed forward with this. It would break my heart, as a matter of fact. So I was hoping that we would have a discussion and not be pronouncing, but I will ask for a motion.
Well, let me just react if I can, because I believe that this is a step to get the community input, and that the design that Crane drafted is not locked in stone. As Director Throne said, we are the client, the community is the client, and the architect will execute what the community tells them they want. So I think we can still get there, and can be a great win-win.
And I think I'm informed that there have already been comments that have been given to staff that have yet to make it and didn't change, because this is still the plan that was in August 1st that we're now sending out to the community. So I haven't seen any changes. There have been people who've tried to comment on this. I know that for a fact. And they've said it and sent in comments, tried to solicit and give their input, and they have been rejected all the way. And a 3 or 4 week comment period is not adequate.
Are you talking about something specific? Because if that's the case, I'd like to know. Have public input been provided that's been rejected at this point?
There's been requests to meet and speak and find out about this, and that was not accepted.
Is that correct?
No, sir.
Thank you.
As far as I know, it has, so thank you. And also, the fact that we're now going to do this in 3 or 4 weeks is not adequate to have a robust community engagement. I think this is a violation of our public trust. We need more bids to execute our fiduciary responsibilities and move forward at all.
I do think Councilmember Jacobowski had an interesting idea to have a task force to work with staff to shepherd this through the process.
And I do have a motion prepared. Should we wrap this up and move on to that detail?
So I would like to make a motion to have staff come back with an extended period of public input and reject the agreement with Crane at this time and leave it up to a community task force to finalize the needs and communicate the wishes of residents, and then go back and search for an architect.
Second.
I have a second. Roll call, please.
Sorry, Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
No.
Councilmember Chung?
No.
Vice Mayor Udi?
No.
Mayor Shepherd-Rami?
Yes.
All right.
Do I have another motion?
Let me see. I move to award a professional design service agreement in the amount of $349,660 to Crane Architecture Group of Fullerton, California, which is attached as Exhibit 1 to the staff report, or Exhibit I guess, for the preparation of plan specification and cost estimates for the renovation of the San Marino City Center, and to begin the engagement of a substantial public input, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
And just to clarify, it is a 1. Not an aye.
One, that's fine.
And may I ask for clarification? Director Throne had mentioned that there was one error in one of the attachments, so that is a...
Subject to the Throne Amendment with respect to the 3-week public engagement, that is withdrawn, and instead we will have a substantial public input as pursuant to my motion.
I'll second that.
A roll call? Okay. Councilmember Long?
No.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Schultz?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eady?
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd-Rami?
No.
Mayor, I would like to make...
I think it's closed.
Do you want,
Motion passed? Am I mistaken?
the motion did pass, but I think that she mentioned in her comment that she wants to make a motion which is more in line with the desires of the public with respect to public input. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you have a motion?
Yes. It is my motion that City Council immediately form a San Marino Center ad hoc oversight committee comprised of the 2 recreation liaisons and community representatives, including but not limited to parent, repeat recreation department consumer, senior, friends of the recreation department, that could be former commissioners, blue ribbon, whatever, library body oversight liaison, a San Marino Center adjacent resident, an in-town civic group representative, and a teen recreation department consumer. The selection of this committee would be determined by the 2 liaisons and the city manager. This group would first receive the draft architectural plan for review before presenting it to City Council for approval. As a side note there, we know we'll get lots of good input, but we certainly would count on this group to help vet that input. Receive the final plan prior to presentation before City Council later this year, and to remain available for any related expertise or input as needed during the entire architectural process. This group will meet at least bi-weekly to discuss the reliable use and adherence to the community input as received and supported by City Council.
Can you reread the motion? Who is part of this task force?
Pardon me?
I haven't seen this before, so can you reread who is this community task force?
Sure.
Who you are designating?
Sure. It would include the 2 existing liaisons, not unlike the previous ad hoc work group that reviewed the city operations a number of years ago. So they become the ad hoc group, and the rest are what are referred to as citizen advisors. So the persons that I would recommend, and I'm certainly open to change, to be as representatives on the ad hoc committee would include a parent, a repeat recreation department consumer, a senior, representative of Friends of Recreation, that could be former commissioners, blue ribbon committee members, a library oversight body liaison, a San Marino Center adjacent resident, an in-town civic group representative, and a teen recreation department consumer.
And so those would be the total of who would serve on the committee?
Correct. And I'm certainly open to a friendly amendment on that.
Question? So this committee would be making a decision prior to our September meeting? Do we have enough time to do all
Because
this?
today we would be signing we would be executing the contract momentarily, and we want that oversight body to be in place as soon as possible. And it's going to take a little bit of time to get the word out, to get interest from the community. But I think we all mean what we say in that this now moves, this phase moves into the community. And I think that these representatives will give outstanding input and direction in any needed way as we move forward. So that would be the purpose, and they would have distinct duties and then additional as requested.
Thank you.
Could I just request an amendment to just keep open also a community member at large in case someone that is interested doesn't fit any of those in this oversight ad hoc committee at all, doesn't fit in there, because I don't know if someone like Ms. Lamb would be interested in whether she fits in one of those groups. So
excellent, thank you.
Right, my concern is similarly by delineating those specific individuals, we're getting people who are all rec department necessarily, except for a teen, I guess. And
I've also included representatives of the community. Parent is just a general term, it doesn't necessarily designate rec. Senior doesn't necessarily designate recreation. Library, because of our relationship and hopefully working together.
Right, but that's part of rec.
Well, for discussion purposes, it's a separate focus. Adjacent resident, somebody who will be near this, who can give input as to what they will be seeing. Civic group rep, that can be one of the groups that meets in town with no preference. So the two that are rec specific, Mayor, would be a repeat rec department consumer and a teen rec department consumer, but if you would like to, I'm sorry, and friends of the recreation, but if you'd like to.
The library person.
But again, for purposes of this, I'm separating it out. But if you would like to rename the designation, would you like, for example?
My concern is just that we should have perhaps architectural or former planning commission members, somebody who brings, we have residents in the community who are interested in the project, and we're focusing on the uses and not focusing on what I think is most relevant at this time as it's going forward is the actual design. And so that your list to me seems to speak to uses and not really the architect. So I would love to have at least 2 or 3 community members who have architectural or design experience who can help us at this point in the process.
I appreciate your comment on design review, planning commission history. The one thing I would strongly recommend,
or architects, I'm not limiting it to that.
Okay. I would strongly recommend, and I think we may need to play with this list a little bit more, because when I served on the ad hoc committee that reviewed City Hall, there were 5 of us, and I think getting beyond that, making comment, getting decision-making becomes really, really difficult. I even struggled with these items as they're listed here. If it would be the preference of this body, let's see, we meet again in August, correct?
The 21st.
So if you would prefer to further delineate who these parties should be, we can finalize it at the August meeting, but I feel very strongly that we need to get these people in place as soon as possible and not be a large group which would make decision-making more difficult. Would the group like to eliminate today some of these and substitute some others?
I just don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, and I would love to be helpful, but I do think since we're at the design phase, we have to reflect the need for
that's a good suggestion.
Architectural experience, perhaps on our committees, or architects and designers that we have in town, because that's most relevant at this. I assume that we also are still pursuing with our community services director, the needs concept, and a lot of those people who are related to rec users and things like that that's part of the needs survey that's coming. So I don't mind some, but again, that's a lot of people who are doing that.
Okay, so what would you recommend for recreation, that we had representatives that would be called Friends of Recreation, meaning somebody who's a former commissioner or a Blue Ribbon Committee member? Would you like to eliminate maybe that category?
No, I would eliminate probably, well, okay, sure. I don't, like I said, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know. I can't do it without reading.
I understand. Here you go.
Okay, we will repeat recreation department consumer. And we have 2 representatives of Friends of Recreation.
And that is what I think we were eliminating, right?
I would, and an adjacent resident, an in-town civic group representatives, and a teen recreation department consumer. It's probably going to be most difficult to get a teen with school starting.
All right, let's eliminate that one. And I like your idea of somebody with architecture in their background.
And then take out maybe one person who's a recreation.
Sure.
Just on one of the, what you're calling the Friends of Recreation.
Sure.
And then get rid of the user because they would be represented by that as well.
Sure. So to read off what we, I think, have as an amended group, somebody with architectural experience and or background with design review committee or planning commission. You want 2? Okay. A parent, a recreation department consumer, a senior, 1 a library oversight body liaison, an adjacent San Marino Center resident, an in-town civic group representative, and an at-large member?
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
And I will certainly pass this over for recording when we're done.
Mayor, at whatever point it seems appropriate, I will have some practical questions about this whenever you think it's appropriate.
So we have a motion for that, what are we calling this?
An ad hoc oversight, San Marino Center Oversight Committee.
And the 2 council members to that committee are the 2 recreation department liaisons.
Liaisons who have been with this project since it was presented a few months ago.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Could this be my opportunity for questions?
Sure. Please.
All right, so there was a lot to what you said. I took down as many notes as I could. I think that I have the group membership categories. That totals 9 people plus the 2 liaisons, so that would make 11 people at minimum. I understand, and I guess this is my question. I just want to be sure that I understand. This is a committee that would be formed to receive the design prior to you making a decision on it potentially on September 9th, and then again for the final design. I guess my question is that is a lot of people to have to schedule in a short period of time. I think I heard you say that the choice of the selection of the actual people would be governed by the liaisons and I guess myself. So that potentially speeds things up in terms of the selection. What will the consequence be if we are unable to get every one of these people together? Is it going to be acceptable if we just pull together whoever's schedules make it so on those meetings? Or I guess that my question is an implementation question. This is a lot of people to have to coordinate schedules for in a very short time frame. So what is the expectation there for that?
I concur completely, and I think that was why I was referencing the ad hoc committee that I was part of, being a smaller group. It is difficult getting people to come together. Since their input is so important, I would be fine with if they are offered, say, 3 time opportunities to go with the group that can, the largest group that can meet at those times.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I think I've had my questions answered.
So we have a motion, and Councilmember Taunt seconded, right?
That is correct.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Tall?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Udi?
Yes.
And Mayor Shepherd-Rami?
Yes. Thank you. Councilmember Jacobowski. We are now going to go back to agenda item. Sure, a 5-minute break. Everybody is ready? Sure, of course. Thank you, Chief. All right, I'd like to bring this back so we can move through this. The police update, I believe, which is agenda item number 3.
Good morning, Council, Mayor. I thought I'd go very in-depth on this, this item.
Good.
However...
Can't wait.
However, I just want to focus on 3 things. The report is very in-depth. It covers a lot of the areas of what we have been involved in the past 6 months. The 3 places I want to discuss in the report are our increases, in particular in larcenies, our community engagement, and then I'm going to just touch briefly on some of the legislation measures that are currently, the bills that are currently up in Sacramento. As it deals with our crime information, we've had an increase of about 33% in Part 1 crimes. That 33% is fueled primarily because of larcenies. Larcenies, again, are thefts, and those areas are vehicle thefts from motor vehicle, where a car is left open and items of property are left visible. Thefts of packages, and also thefts of gardening equipment from our local gardeners. In regards to the vehicles, we have primarily had a problem at Lacey Park. As you're well aware, we installed 22 flock safety cameras throughout the city. One of the cameras we did install is in a parking lot at Lacey Park that can assist us with solving some of those crimes. We're contacting community members, we are putting out flyers, we have signage in the park to try and dissuade people from leaving items of property. With the community's help on that, that is significant crime that can be reduced by the actions of the community. And we're looking forward to engaging even more with the community on ways to prevent that. As far as package thefts, we work with the Amazon. We talked to some other companies about trying to place things in a safe location. We are currently speaking with Amazon about the installation of an Amazon package locker. And that locker could be installed at City Hall or either here at the San Marino Center or also the library. They come in different sizes. I've had included Aldo Cervantes, Michael Ferrone in our discussions, and also Josette Espinoza on the discussions about placement of the boxes. That will be moving forward. Hopefully within a couple months, we'll have a better idea of exactly where. They've given a tentative approval, Amazon has, of installing one within the city for us. Hopefully our community members will take advantage of that
And especially if we have it in this location, it's very easy in and out. The other area that we are having problems with is dust of gardening equipment. As you're well aware, a gardener's lawnmower is about $1,500 for a commercial lawnmower. And when these individuals have a lawnmower stolen, they are out of work. And it has a significant impact on not just themselves, the other members of their crew or their families. We have developed a flyer that we've given to planning so they can distribute to gardeners that come in to renew or obtain new business licenses. We've also provided it to the officers, so as they go out in patrol, when they come across a gardener whose equipment is not secured or is parked on the street, they can give it to them or remind them to be safe. We're also working with another agency about a known location where we believe the items are being fenced, and that's part of an ongoing investigation. And the other thing on one of the items is we're asking the gardeners to ask their clients to allow them to park their vehicles on the driveway or towards the back of the property away from the street. That gives them additional protection and less likely to have an item stolen. The second area that I'd like to speak about is our community engagement. Last night we had a Zoom meeting with our block captains. It's the first one that we've been able to have. We had 25 people engaged with us in that meeting. We are working with them to provide information that they can distribute to their other members of their block clubs. We have 2 brand new members that joined us last night, which is very nice. We have sent out my 6-month report to them. We sent out the PowerPoint presentation that we had so they can share it with their members of their community. And we're going to make sure that each month the Public Safety Commission report regarding the police department is sent to them along with other information that they've requested. We're working on a survey that we will provide to the block captains, and then a different one, once we have input from the block captains, to provide it to members of the community to help us understand what their needs are, a better way of communicating, and what they would like us to do regarding crime prevention and what they would like to do also with crime prevention. And then the final area is issues with legislation at the state. There are approximately 25 plus bills that deal with police reform, with records, with a variety of issues that will have an impact on policing. Additionally, the County Board of Supervisors is in the middle of placing a measure on the fall ballot after they have another reading next week. That would significantly reduce the funding to the LA County Sheriffs, to the Los Angeles County District Attorney, and the Los Angeles County Department of Probation. As you're well aware, I'm still the president of the LA County Police Chiefs, and I'm on the legislation committee for the California Police Chiefs Association. This measure that's at the county can have a significant impact on what services we receive from the district attorney. The cuts that they could experience could result in our inability to prosecute misdemeanor crimes that we use the DA's office for. It could have an impact on certain investigative assistance that we've used. And with probation, they are certainly coming up with some very novel ways of diversion, alternatives to incarceration, and other things that can help reduce crime and provide assistance to the people who are committing low-level crimes, those that are suffering from homelessness and also those suffering from addiction. We're monitoring this through the LA County Chiefs, as are many other organizations. And as far as the state, there's three measures that I want to, or bills that I want to discuss. The first one is Senate Bill 731. And what that would do is change immunity protections for law enforcement when officers are doing what they believe is right based upon the training experience. The other part of that bill is a decertification of a police officer in regards to any crimes they commit or any major misconduct that they commit where they will not be able to become a police officer. Personally, I do support the decertification. I have experiences in my past where I've seen officers that were fired from different agencies and hired by other ones where they then commit additional misconduct. Well, we don't have a place for those kind of individuals in law enforcement. And there's aspects of this bill that we do support. The next one is Senate Bill 776. And that bill would mandate the release of every use of force incident. That would also include aspects of Senate Bill 1421, which dealt with the release of information of police officer records if they are found guilty or sustained finding of sexual assault, dishonesty, wrongful arrests, and so forth. But what this bill will do is mandate that we keep all of these records for eternity. It will mandate that we provide a searchable database for every record of every officer. It also will include every misconduct or complaint investigation made by either a department or a community member against a police officer, whether it is sustained, not resolved, meaning there's no information to prove or disprove it occurred, exonerated, which means the officer's conduct was within policy and within law, or unfounded, which means it never even occurred. So all of that information will have to be maintained and provided to the public. So the impact on record keeping and cost to cities is significant. Cal Chiefs is working with the governor's office on some aspects of that, but those are some of the tone and tenor of some of these bills that will have long-range effects on the operations of police departments and also the fiscal impact of police departments to the cities that they are part of. The other part of that measure is that it could include civilian employees, and it could also require the release of settlement information on all police department employees, sworn or civilian. And then the final one is Assembly Bill 1022, which would require that any officer who fails to intercede in a use of force that is not within policy or perhaps illegal can be found guilty of the same crime that's being committed by that officer who's committing that misconduct. However, one of the problems is when you have multiple officers arrive at multiple times within an incident, you could have a secondary or tertiary officer responding to a request for backup, get out of his car, and be at the scene, and that officer can be charged with either assault or whatever that primary officer did. So those are all things that could have a significant impact on financial operations and also recruitment of police officers. There's many others that are on there, as I said, 25 plus, but I can keep you informed, or I would really wish that you also monitor some of the information that's in the news, and not endorsing or saying anything about them, but I just wanted to bring them to your attention. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief Encanto. Council Member Wong, do you have any questions?
No, I don't, but thank you, Chief, for the report.
Council Member Paul?
Thank you, Chief, for the report. One question on the auto thefts. How many of those auto thefts have been caused by people leaving like a key fob in their car?
A small number, but still, we do have people occasionally do leave their key fob in the car. It's convenient for them, and it does happen, but it's a very small number.
And secondly, have we had any hits on anybody trying to steal a car or break into a car as a result of the I forget what it's called,
The flock camera?
yes, the flock
Yes,
camera.
yes, we do.
Oh, good. I mean, bad for them, but good that the resources being used.
The problem, we did a follow-up on that case. We were able to find out that the property that was taken from the vehicle in the parking lot was used to purchase items at a nearby Target. However, the victim is uncooperative and is not providing us with information that would help us to verify who the person was in Target. We have video available to us. Target is making that information. So we're still trying to encourage the victim to come forward.
Thank you, Chief.
Vice Mayor Udi?
No questions, thank you.
Chief, I just wanted... Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Yes, Councilmember
Thank you so
Jacobowski.
much. Thank you so much. First of all, I appreciate your report, and I would like to give you thanks on one of the items that is listed in your report, and it's under the broad topic of traffic issues. As I've made pretty much public, Saturday and Sunday mornings, I could usually be found doing a 4-mile round trip foot journey on Huntington Drive. And there is something absolutely enticing to fast drivers about Saturday and Sunday morning. Traffic is even less, and it's very, very rare that I don't witness some type of drag racing go on. I was delighted this past week to pass not one but 2 black and whites that were out there on patrol. Unfortunately, after both had gone to the side streets, a motorcycle whizzed by at what I would guess to be maybe 70 miles an hour. If he splatted, he would truly be flat. So I'm really pleased that the officers are out there during that prime drag racing time on Saturday and Sunday mornings. It's well appreciated. Thank you.
Welcome.
The second comment, I read your police reports in detail every single week because I'd like to see the patterns and trends of the kind of crime that's being committed in the community. And as you mentioned, the theft of gardening equipment is extremely painful to read about. You mentioned the cost, and as most of us know, these gardeners work hard. They work 6 days a week. They don't have benefits, and I don't know about other council members, but I've been pleased in the 16 years or so that I've had the benefit of my gardener working. And he and I have had some really good discussions on this theft issue. And I have been a huge advocate of what I call safer and back. And I demand that, like a number of the gardeners, they may work on more than one house during a visit. And all it takes is a gardener to be working in back with their vehicle up front, and wham, they could be the victim of theft. What disturbs me even more, as you well know, Chief, I was indirectly involved in a frightening incident about 5 years ago when you first arrived and I was going on the Planning Commission. The Circle Bridge was closed down and it was blocked off, and theft of equipment had just occurred. It normally occurs, I guess, in rental vehicles. A truck came at me. I thought they were going to hit me head on, so luckily I'm still here. Instead, they went over my vehicle, their wheel broke off, they crashed behind me, my car disintegrated, and they fled with guns. I don't want any other resident to have a similar experience, and I shudder to think if these thefts are going on with weapons to intimidate gardeners, and a gardener or a resident gets in the way. So if there is some way that we can operationalize a safer at home or safer and back program, I would be very appreciative. Along the way, I interview gardeners who are working out front and asking them if they're have an option of parking in back. And I sometimes hear simple things like my truck leaks and they don't want me in the driveway with my leaking oil. I get that completely. No reason why they can't bring along their own cardboard and stick it under their vehicle. We have sitting ducks out in front of properties, and we are putting gardeners and residents at high risk because we know that weapons are used to steal this equipment. Is this something that you might be able to more formally operationalize for our gardeners in town?
Yes, those are very true experiences. I certainly do still remember our first meeting, which was unfortunate in the manner that it occurred. But we've had discussions with gardeners ourselves. My father-in-law and brother-in-law have a very successful landscape architecture and landscape tree service. My father-in-law has related a story when he was here and starting his business very early on, where he is in a tree trimming it, and he looks down and two individuals steal 2 of his chainsaws. That had a big impact on his ability to do his work and support his family for a while. So we are aware of it, we are aware of the importance, and we will look to develop a program with our community and with the gardeners, and perhaps incorporate it into our Business Watch plan that we have, along with Neighborhood Watch.
I was
But I
going to say
appreciate that.
Neighborhood
Thank you
Watch
very
might
much.
be able to be great advocates for it. And to let people know, there is a huge safety issue for all involved. These thefts do not occur without weapons. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I wanted to just quickly ask you about page 3-10, which the graphics, or we could go to the report, but I guess since we have metrics now, thanks to your department and Vice Mayor Udis, this has to do with the traffic collisions in particular in San Marino. And I am glad to see one category is down. However, I'm worried about the pedestrian and bicycle car or automobile, moving vehicle, and the fact that we've seen an increase in injury accidents. And these are, so I'm wondering, I do appreciate, as Council Member Jacobowski, I do see a lot of the police on the streets and especially during peak times as well. So I really appreciate that, and I think that adds to safety tremendously, particularly about traffic. But I'm wondering if you can bring this up and discuss amongst your leadership as to other things that we could do to help. I noticed, and I want to bring this to Director Throne's attention as well, that one of the areas is Huntington and St. Albans as one of the 3 most concerning. You call it location of concern, but it's in the other report as well, in your written report. And I know that intersection had come before City Council before because of the backups and the light timing and everything. But I'm just wondering if that seems like a higher amount it's obviously higher than last year at that location. If we can bring that back and you could work with Director Throne about some things in particular. I mean, I think that might, the Public Safety Commission might be a good group to give input on some things, and we could get that back to City Council if you would work, or if you recommend any other course of action, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, we will. And St. Albans is an area that we've been working on changing some lane delineations. And one of the other things that's pointing out is that Huntington San Marino is, since I've been here, has been our #1 problem. And it is clearly an engineering issue, and there's many options, and we've talked about it. Maybe he doesn't agree, but it is an area that there's been plans and discussions on changing how that intersection is built or is operated. But we're definitely going to work with Director Throne.
I'd appreciate it, you're right, if you bring that back to council sometime and we can get your collaboration on kind of trying to reduce that, because the statistics going up are very worrisome, and the speeds with which, people, but it's not just that, obviously. You have the reasons over here, the collision factors, but I'd appreciate your input and your work with Director Throne to try to reduce those numbers.
We will. Thank you.
Mayor,
Thank you.
I think we had the study completed on that, correct, Director Thone, on that intersection, the St. Albans, Huntington?
We did, and then went to Public Safety Commission, and they had additional questions about, we had recommended a lane configuration change, then it was either, I think it may have come to the council.
It did.
The council
It did,
said,
and it was
hey,
through-
can you go back and look at the prior configuration to see why that was changed, and we're still researching that. TransTech, our traffic engineers, have that on their agenda as items to do, and I will follow up with them.
Right, I think it had to do with the staggered lights or something like that. There was going to be something that was new.
Yes, we did bring a signalization change that had some expense associated with it, and the council did ask to go back and look at that again. We have to either bring that back through Public Safety Commission or CZU.
Having lived just south of there for quite a while, I can certainly attest to the former configuration working just perfectly. So I hope we will look at that again.
There was a major accident there this last weekend, 2 weekends ago. St. Albans and Huntington.
Believe so. I think my brain's full, so I can't remember right now.
Thank you, Chief, very much for bringing this to our attention, and I appreciate your work and that of your department.
Thank you.
Keeping our community as safe as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have, would be a receive and file. There's no motion needed, correct?
Public comment?
Right. Is there any, my apologies, I didn't see anybody here, so is there any public comment or email comment online that you see?
We did not have, let me see, an email. I'm sorry, I have an email, I'm just seeing if it's part of this. It is not for this agenda item. And we do not have anyone wishing to speak on Zoom.
All right.
Mayor, a motion to receive and file with just a voice vote would be appropriate.
Thanks. Okay, so I will assume that we don't have any public comment on this. I'm not seeing anybody present and no comment cards. Do we have any other discussion among council members that we need to have? All right, can I get a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
And the voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now agenda item 4, recommendation to carry over for year 2019-2020 unused accrued administrative leave for 3 months.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is one of the many COVID-related items that we've been dealing with over the last few months and probably will continue to. Administrative leave is part of the compensation package that we offer to all exempt employees of the city. An exempt employee, of course, just as a reminder, is an employee who is not eligible to receive overtime, meaning that if people work extra hours, council meetings, weekends, evenings, and that sort of thing, there's no direct compensation for those extra hours. Administrative leave is utilized in the same manner as essentially vacation leave. It is paid time off that is a separate leave bank. The allocation of administrative leave here in San Marino happens once a year, and it occurs on a fiscal year schedule. So people are allocated their administrative leave allotment on July 1, and it is a use it or lose it system. So if they have not used it by June 30th of the following calendar year, that amount of time is forfeit. In this particular case, as you well know, as we've even talked about today, COVID hit us roughly in March, and at that point in time, time off was essentially suspended, which means that any exempt employees who had an administrative leave balance still left over essentially were not permitted to use it. This was not a short period of time, as you know. Of course, COVID continues, although things have improved a bit and people are now beginning to take some time off. Well-deserved, I might add. But it does happen that anyone who did not have the crazy prescient foresight to take their administrative leave prior to March was not able to use it before the fiscal year concluded. So in your staff report, I've provided you a summary of what the positions are that had administrative leave that they would have forfeited on June 30th. And my request to you, in consideration of all the time and hours that everybody has worked over the last several months, plus the inability to take any of that time off, to extend the use of that admin leave for an additional 3 months, which would essentially conclude on September 30th of this year. If you agree with that recommendation, an appropriate motion would be a motion to extend the expiration date of the fiscal year 1920 administrative leave to September 30th, 2020, and I am available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from council? Councilmember Tall?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. Do people leave, last year, did people leave administrative leave on the table?
It is highly unusual. I don't know precisely. I would guess virtually no.
My principal concern is how are you going to go about staggering some of this? We can't have both the finance director and the account manager taking a total of 120 hours, 130 hours in a 3-month period, because then we're stuck.
Agreed. That's a great question. If you choose to extend this for 3 months, what we would essentially be doing is retroactively crediting everybody these balances back to this July 1st. As I mentioned, the COVID period has lightened up a little bit, at least in terms of needing to be here on a daily basis, so people have started to take time off. And there are positions that are listed here on this page that actually have already taken some time off in July. At the moment, it's being credited either to this current year's administrative leave allotment or their vacation time. If you were to approve this, then we would go back retroactively and deduct the administrative leave balance. I don't want to get too far into specific employee situations, but just as an example, your finance director has taken some time off earlier in July that was approved that he's taken off. And if you were to approve this, we would just deduct that amount from this already. So the numbers you see here are what would be credited back, but not necessarily the amount of time that people would still be taking off through September 30th, if that makes sense.
I don't know if it does yet. I have to.
So let me.
I have no further
Okay.
questions.
I could go further into that example.
No, it's okay. I get the gist of it. It's okay.
Councilmember Wong?
No question, thank you.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question. So, were any of these persons on a compressed schedule during time of COVID, in that they were working less than a 40-hour week if they, even if they still had to be present for meetings?
Sure, the answer to that is both yes and no. There are some people on this list that worked absolutely no change in schedule. That would reflect your sworn employees, and the two that are listed here that fall into that category specifically are the police commander and the police records manager. They were essential personnel and were not permitted to work any reduced schedule. The executive team and the people that were serving in the executive team capacity, some of those people did indeed take advantage of working from home some days, but as you kind of mentioned in your comment, those people were all still expected to take part in daily meetings, to be available, and were essentially teleworking from home, not having a day off. There were a few people that were able to receive the benefit of working a reduced work week and still receiving full compensation, that were not expected to participate in any day-to-day activities at work, and were able to decompress, as it were, at home. Those three positions would be the accounting manager / controller, the code enforcement manager, and the city librarian.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Guidi?
No questions, thank you.
I just had a question about your last comment. The difference between the general managers and the executive team, the general managers did not get an additional day off per pay period, and the executive team to work at home or stay home, or did they?
Okay,
I'm not following the I thought I had you, with talking about executive team and that they were home for an additional day during the pay period. They could stay home and work, telework or do whatever. But I didn't understand, then you went to, you listed the names or the categories under general managers, and I'm confused as to what their work situation was during the relevant time period, putting our sworn personnel aside.
Okay. So, and just to be clear, when I'm putting aside sworn personnel, it's actually sworn department personnel. Sworn usually means people with a badge, but like our records manager, she is not sworn, but she's in a sworn department, and no sworn department employee was able to work a different schedule.
Meaning they could not have the option of doing 30% less?
Correct.
Okay.
They could not even have the option of 1% less.
Okay.
We needed them desperately, and they certainly came through. For everybody else, all non-sworn department employees had this schedule available to them, that there could be a reduced work schedule, and as council will recall, this was to space out the number of people who were in City Hall, to be mindful of social distancing protocols and so forth. The idea was to minimize the number of people in City Hall. And depending on what tier of hours worked they fell into, that affected how much pay they received and how much of their own leave time they might have needed to use to offset it. So everybody other than a non-sworn department employee had that available to them. The executive team members who chose to utilize some of those days still had to work. It's the simplest way to say that. The general manager category, that by the way is just a weird, that's what we call that category in our personnel documents. In most places you would call that your mid-management group, but for whatever reason the city has used the term general managers. So in that group, none of those people were required to still work on those days that they were off. Did that help or did that make it worse?
Yes, I think that helped.
Okay.
And I have one last question, and this is about the recreation supervisor and the interaction with the community development director, because down here in your first asterisk, it says, please note the recreation supervisor attended all daily meetings as well to stand in for the interim director given her limited schedule and availability. But yet, she had this additional day during the pay period, and yet she is a 43.5 balance and was not following.
No, so this is one of those confusing things now that
Oh,
we
that's
have
right.
Aldo who's
This
a
is
community
Aldo.
development
Yeah.
director.
You're not related.
I thought the same thing.
I always
minute.
do that. I'm so sorry.
So-
When I say community,
I know.
assume-
Good job, Aldo. And then we have a community engagement manager, just to,
It's really hard for me. A lot of community there and a lot of people
community. We have a
developing,
lot of community.
engaging,
That's
and serving, and I'm not keeping them separate.
So the issue
Okay.
here is that, of course, we have an interim community services director.
You're right.
She is not considered a full-time employee because she's a temporary interim appointment. So she is not on this list because she has no administrative leave.
I
granted
gotcha.
her. It's not that she hadn't used it, she didn't have it at
Thank
all.
you. No, I
And
understand.
because her schedule is limited as an interim, we were concerned during this crisis period that she wouldn't be available every day for all the things that were happening. So we asked the rest supervisor to step in and provide some consistency. So he also has attended all of those meetings, even when he was home. It's an unusual situation.
And was the rec, just to clarify, was the rec supervisor also like the general managers, except for sworn department personnel, not all sworn, also on a I don't know what you call it, a 60% schedule?
Yes, so it was not 60%. I wouldn't
Okay.
want us to
I'm
stick
sorry.
with that number. But yes, again, all non-sworn employees, including the executive team, were offered the opportunity to take advantage of that schedule. And so he did have that available to him.
Okay.
But even when he was off, he had to respond in much the same way that the rest of the executive team had to respond.
Okay, thank you. And my apologies for saying that.
No, I imagine that will not
I
be the
promise.
last time that we have that confusion.
Do we have any, I'd like to open this, and well, I don't know if anybody else has any questions, or we're good to open this up to public comment. Do we have anybody? I don't see anybody present. I don't know if you received a comment card, or then if we've received any emails or have hands raised online.
We do not have any emails for this item. And it does not look like anyone is asking to speak on Zoom, so we do not have any comments.
All right, then I will give them a couple more seconds. If there's any, is there anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we do. We do have two members of the public with us.
Okay, I just was get it dispensed. So those two members, if you're out there, hello, let us know. Otherwise, I'll bring it back to council and see if there's any discussion, further discussion on this, or we have a motion. Seeing nothing from email or from online platforms, I'll bring it back, and I don't know who started this, my apologies. Councilmember Tall?
Yes, I did. I'd just like to see a cap on this. You know, that's all. It seems, I'm confused as to what their responsibilities were, why they were earning this administrative leave. The responsibilities were with respect to the hours that they will work while earning this leave. I do feel bad for some of these people who did not have a reduced schedule. And you know, had to be here, such as the fire chief, the police chief, and the commanders, and the records manager. I'm just not, if we do something, I just want to see a cap on this, because quite frankly, nobody had an opportunity for vacation during this time period. It's like, you know, you give me administrative leave, and gee, I don't want to go home anyway. But you know, it's just, it seems like we should find some compromise in this somehow, and that's why I'd like to see a cap on this.
Okay, Councilmember Jacobowski, your thoughts or comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I have some concerns about one category, and that's general managers, because without, and it's so good that we have no name, so without getting into that, there's the inability to work at home, unlike the executive team. So I do have a struggle with giving this balance to those folks who did work this compressed schedule or did have the day at home where they were still being paid, and then to additionally add this balance. But I'll certainly go with where the rest of my colleagues are at.
Thank you. Councilmember Wong?
Well, I think Councilmember Todd had a point. You know, they can't really go anywhere. So I think I can support this motion.
I'm sorry, you can or
They can. I can. Yes, I can support this. I mean, because I mean, even if we if we extend it to September, I don't foresee them going anywhere in the meantime.
Well, maybe
They can stay home and
a
relax.
long walk or a hike in the wilderness might be appropriate. Vice Mayor Udi?
I did, until this came up, I was unaware that we had administrative leave of 80 hours. So you get 2 weeks vacation plus 2 weeks vacation. I didn't realize that we were that generous. You know, and I think it would be the city manager's responsibility to make sure that the city's business gets done effectively between now and the end of September. So I'd be disappointed if all these hours were in fact used.
And I guess, thank you. And I guess my comment is only, is with regard to our police chief, our fire chief, and our sworn department personnel, including the police records manager, who had no option to take admin leave and during that time. And I would like to see them be the group that is allowed, at least at a minimum, to be able to use their time that they, the extension of the time that they previously accrued. Because I think everybody deserves a break, even if it's not a vacation. It's a chance to be at home and regroup from, and they've been working a considerable amount of time. But it's all subject to their own schedules and city manager as to making it work. But I would push that, particularly those groups that did not have any option to be at home during this and have come in religiously to support our community and keep us safe, do have the ability to take that time that otherwise they couldn't. Yes?
Or can we just extend for those you know, who didn't have any reduced or changed schedule?
I think it's the one and the same, that's what I'm saying, right? That those are the ones that didn't have a reduced schedule.
Yeah, I can support that.
Any other comments? Okay, do you want to make a motion? Do I have a motion? Sorry.
Can I try? I move to extend the expiration date of the fiscal year 2019-2020 administrative leave to September 30th, 2020 as follows. That for executive team managers, other than sworn safety officers, that they be allowed administrative leave not to exceed 20 hours, and that the general managers be allowed to extend the administrative leave not to exceed 16 hours. That's 2 days. Or 14 point, whatever it is, 15 hours.
And about, you excluded in your motion anything for the sworn
For
personnel?
the whom?
For the chiefs and the sworn personnel?
No, the
I'm sorry.
executive team managers would have an amount not to exceed
20 hours.
20 hours, you said.
20 hours.
And that's to all?
That's to all executive team managers. All safety officers, the police commander, and the police records manager not to exceed 20 hours. And as to the remaining general managers, not
I'm
to
sorry,
exceed
you had said
15.
16 before.
No, I meant the police commander not to exceed 20 hours. Let me take you through this again. Let me amend my own motion.
Start over.
Okay.
How about that? This is kind of confusing.
I move to extend the expiration date of the fiscal year 2019-20 administrative leave to September 30th, 2020 as follows. As to the executive team managers, each and every one of them, an amount not to exceed 20 hours. As to the general managers, with the exception of the police commander, an amount not to exceed 16 hours. And for the police commander, an amount not to exceed 20 hours.
Are you not including the police records manager?
Police record manager
Under
is
that.
included within the...
Oh, within the 16 anyway.
The 15.
Yeah, because of what's reported here.
As is the rec supervisor.
Oh, the recreation supervisor, 2.5 hours is acceptable.
Approved.
Okay, can I just be sure I have this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it would be capped for executive team managers at a carryover not to exceed 20 hours. For all general managers except the police commander, it would be capped at 16 hours. The police commander would be capped at 20 hours. And the rec supervisor would be capped at 2.5.
2.5 hours.
Okay, that's accurate? Okay.
That is, yes.
Second.
Should roll call, please?
Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Tall?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Eady?
Yes.
And Mayor Shepherd-Romney?
No. Next, we have agenda item 5, denial of claim against the city filed by Lori Barlow.
Mayor, before it gets started, I'm going to have to recuse myself and disqualify myself for this, as Ms. Barlow is a continuing client of mine as a trustee of a trust that I represent. So I will have to recuse myself.
Thank you, Mayor. On June 4th, Ms. Lori Barlow submitted a claim against the city regarding a wall between her property and a neighboring property that she contends is unstable. The amount of her claim was $21,380. Typically, the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority addresses claims that are filed against the city. However, in this instance, this claim is not within the CJPIA memorandum of coverage because it involves a discretionary city action. Director Cervantes has met with Ms. Barlow in the past and has advised her that this claim, it's a private matter between two adjacent private owners of the properties. This is not a city-owned wall and no city properties involved. So she's gone ahead and has filed this claim against the city. And it's being presented to the council again because it's not being addressed by the Joint Powers Insurance Authority. And we are recommending that the claim be denied and that the interim city clerk be directed to provide notice of the council's action to Ms. Barlow. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Wong, do you have any questions about this?
No, I don't have any questions, thank you.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if this will, well, the appropriate person I'm sure will answer it. I personally had a situation on my own property a number of years ago in San Marino, and I know how the city handled that, but have you in recent years seen this type of situation come up between neighbors? And if so, what was the city's position on it?
We see this mostly come up with trees, conditions related to landscaping where the argument of a neighbor is that a tree has damaged the property or a tree has overgrown so much as that it's crossing the boundary lines. We've historically have identified those situations as being civil matters between property owners. We have not advised property owners with respect to what their legal rights are, merely indicating that that they have a right to approach their neighbors to remedy the situation. The only situations where we found ourselves having to be involved is if the wall were so, for example, if a wall that was shared between properties was so badly damaged that that it did not satisfy the pool safety requirements, that meaning that the wall has leaned so much that it didn't meet the 5-foot barrier requirement, then we would address that as a city code violation. But a majority of the situations has been similar to this, in that there is no legal requirement to conduct code enforcement because the matter is sort of a voluntary situation where the wall is voluntary in this case, and there is no need for the city to look at the code to remedy this condition.
So it is your belief then that neither property has a pool?
There is a koi pond on the adjacent property that is not deep enough, I guess, to require a safety fence. But I went out there about 2 weeks ago again to visit the Lori Barlow's property. I did measure the wall. The wall is 5 feet in height, and that does satisfy, if there were a pool on the neighboring property, it would satisfy the barrier requirement.
I'm going to ask this question of our attorney before I go back to Director Cervantes. Am I permitted to ask for his comment on what he observed with the wall? Because I attempted to walk by the property and of course it's enclosed.
Yes.
So may I ask?
Yes, when this came up about around 2018, this was, we investigated a complaint about a illegal conversion of a patio cover. We responded along with code enforcement. I was also there as well. We did attempt to reach the neighbor to the rear to remedy the unpermitted addition, which we did. At that time, this wall situation did come up as well as potential concerns with damage. I was able to visit Ms. Barlow's property from her end and notice the specific section of the wall in question. There is a designed structural seam on this section of the wall that's adjacent to this property. I noticed that there is rebar inside the connection of these two segments of the wall. The wall is also a retaining wall, meaning that, I don't know how long the wall's been there, but there should be some expectation of a retaining wall to settle and sort of separate to some extent. I did notice a significant cracking of the wall, but adjacent to the other neighboring house, which would be west of the south of the subject site, Lori Barlow's property. I couldn't tell whether this segment was retaining, but the segment in question in terms of the concern of damage, it is a retaining wall, and like I mentioned, there is a design seam of that wall. I did notice rebar inside that wall as well. Visiting the neighbor to the south, adjacent to this wall, there is what I noticed, 2 wooden posts that are buried directly into the ground, minus that of any concrete footing. And so I don't believe, in my mind, that by inserting wood, 2x4 wood posts into the ground without concrete, that would compromise any piece of this retaining wall. The other thing worth noting is that in 2018, between 2018 and now, I did not notice any change to that wall itself. No further damage or damage at all, period.
It certainly wouldn't be your required duty, but in the course of business, did you ask or did you observe any discussion between the 2 neighbors about getting this resolved, or was that just not brought up?
The only thing I noticed was that Ms. Barlow had sought the help of an attorney to remedy this between the property owners, not involving the city in terms of any litigation or potential litigation. That was the only communication that I saw between property owners.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hudi.
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions, thank you. We need to open this up to public comment. No one is here wishing to speak on this item. I don't know if there is any email comment that has been submitted or anybody online would like to speak.
We do not have any emails on this item. And it looks like our 2 remaining visitors would not like to speak either.
Thank
So
you.
we do not have comments.
All right, and then I will bring this back to discussion or motion by council. I don't remember, Councilmember Wong, did you start this?
So I do not believe that it's the city's responsibility to receive this claim, and I think it's between the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jacobowski?
I concur.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hudi?
As do I, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move to reject the claim that was filed against the city by Local Barlow and to direct the acting city clerk to provide written notice of the city council's attention to Ms. Barlow.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we need a roll call?
That would be helpful.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hudi?
Yes.
Mayor Shepherd-Rami?
Yes.
And I will just note that Councilmember Chalt is recusing.
Thank you very much. I believe that is the end of our agenda. At this point, we also have an opportunity for written comments or written communications or public writings distributed. Do we have any that, other than what we have already received?
We do not.
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anybody who wishes to make a public comment at this time? I don't see anybody in this room. But so I extend it to our Zoom or our audio listeners. Oh, we need to get Councilmember Tall.
He is being sought after.
Okay. Do we have anything online?
We do not have anyone requesting to speak, and I do not have any further emails.
Thank you for checking. I'll give it a minute. Councilmember Talt. Okay, so we'll move forward with this. Seeing that there's no public comments online or here, and nobody has submitted an email, I will close the public comment portion and then adjourn this meeting to San Marino City Center on Friday, August 21st at 8:30. I see Councilmember Talt is back. Do you have any writings to inform the council about?
No.
So I will adjourn this meeting to Friday, August 21st at 8:30 a.m. at the San Marino Center, 1800 Huntington Drive. Thank you.